The magical glow of the full moon illuminated every street of the night city. The events of that night took place about 10 years ago in the Republic of Korea, in the city of Seoul. The manager came to the office late at night. All the workers had gone home after a long day at work. This news upset the manager because it meant that it was impossible to measure the class. There were only 2 cases when the Hunter class measurement device showed that it was impossible to measure. As I was heading to the room where the device was located, the employee tried to explain that it was a new measuring device that arrived yesterday from New York by express mail. This device was turned on all at once. The manager suggested that it could be a malfunction. They used to have an old model device, but it really was a malfunction and needed to be fixed. The person the manager was waiting for had already arrived at the office, but when he saw that there was a child sitting in the chair, he was very surprised and thought that there was just some kind of confusion. So the man decided to make sure that it was really Ken Jio. The girl confirmed that it was her, so the manager decided to find out how old Ken Jio was. The girl explained that she was about to enter the 4th grade. This information shocked everyone present. Ken Jio decided to ask whether the age of the awakened was always asked during the registration. Isn't this an invasion of privacy? The manager apologized to the girl. He understood that in their time, humiliating a child was a bad thing. The deputy returned to work after receiving a call. She distracted the manager from talking to Ken Jio. The old-style measuring device could only detect grades A and below. The deputy was overcome with excitement after she saw Ken Jio's report. The girl was only in 3rd grade and only 9 years old. She had skipped several grades. The leader was alarmed that the fate of the country depended on a 9-year-old girl. All this time, there was no S class in South Korea. Anger overwhelmed the manager as he recalled the number of people who had died. Rage gripped him as he looked at the sign of the funeral home. The measurement room was prepared. Although she was still a child, Ken Jio had also become awakened. The supervisor asked Ken Jio to come to the room so they could check her data. Upon completion of the personal data check, it turned out that Ken Jio had S-rank abilities. It was hard to believe, but the system showed exactly the girl's data. This was the first time in the Republic of Korea that an awakened S-rank appeared. In Korea, there was a local server expansion. Due to the emergence of a powerful frontrunner, the Republic of Korea has moved from a country with conventional management to a country with priority management. The leader and his subordinates rejoiced because finally an awakened S-rank appeared in their country. This meant that they would be saved. The man wondered what constellation young Ken Jio served. In the morning, Ken Jio was going to go to the Blue House. A lot of messages started appearing on the blue screen in front of Ken Jio. She didn't understand why there were so many and why she was receiving them. The first thing that Ken Jio was informed about was the change in the rating in the local server of the Republic of Korea. Next, they reported about the first channel of runners in the country. Ken Jio noticed that her contracted star fortune teller was extremely irritated. The director, like everyone else, saw a little girl who had become awakened. Ken Jio was offended by the arrogant attitude of the adults. When she was still very young, Ken Jio did not know what to do. She seemed to be ranked first on the Korean peninsula. About 20 years ago, a tower appeared in every capital of the world. All the media tried to gather information about the tower. But even with the new technologies, they couldn't find out anything. People around the world were getting scared. They began to think that the tower was built by aliens. It was always the case that people always attributed something difficult to explain to aliens. This disaster did not give people time to think and came out of nowhere. The gate opened quite unexpectedly. After the gate opened, monsters immediately began to emerge from the second world. Fear and panic began in countries around the world, but people tried to somehow resist the monsters. But it was impossible to strike a strong blow to the enemy. It seemed that with the arrival of these monsters, the world had come to an end, but there were those who were able to turn the game around. After that day, the genre of the world changed. The present, a new star alone, the Khan family home. Young Ken Jio was sitting in her room watching something on her phone. This is the modern world. Ken Jirok was the second child of the Khan Hunter S-class family. He tried to call his sister, but she couldn't hear him through the headphones. He began to think that he shouldn't have bought his sister a phone. Ken Jio, the first child of the Kohn family, is a 3rd-time applicant to the Republic of Korea. The girl finally heard her brother calling her. Jirok was a little angry with his sister. Didn't she check the news? Unlike Jio, Jirok immediately looked at the breaking news. The breaking news reported that the 42nd floor of the tower had been cleared, but it seemed that Jio was not interested in any of this. Jirok looked at her in surprise and did not understand his sister's behavior. Jirok thought that his sister was just messing with him. He asked Jio to stop doing stupid things and get busy cleaning the tower. Jio was a homebody who liked to stay home and do nothing. Contract star Jio was loudly exclaiming with joy that she had finally pissed off her brother. The genre of a changed world, an awakening. In other words, the era of hunters has come. They called the lower floor of the Tower of Babel that appeared a tutorial. Those who were able to get the ticket to Babylon were reborn into the awakened ones thanks to the tutorial. Those who were able to awaken developed in 2 ways. At the cost of their own lives, the faction of truth climbed the tower of great complexity, or they safely accumulated experience in dungeons with low difficulty, the fugitive faction. Ken Jirok, the younger brother of Ken Jio, was a member of the Truth faction. In Babylon, he went by the name of Bamba. Born 11 months later than Ken Jirok, he was the 4th S-class hunter in Korea. Since childhood, Ken Jirok has had an extraordinary drive to win. As soon as he received his ticket to the tower, he immediately ran to it like a predator on the trail. It looked like Ken Jirok had broken free of the chain, and he was moving rapidly through the tutorial. He had successfully met his constellation and even received a high rank, and he was rapidly climbing up the rankings. Jirok was ranked 5th in the rankings. The Truth faction and the Fugitive faction faced a phenomenal event that shook the entrenched order by dropping the ticket to the Tower of Babel and the past tutorial. A man whose existence is more unlikely than winning the lotto or Super Bowl. This person was chosen by the stars and was nicknamed the Star Spoon. This person was Ken Geo. She was ranked 3rd in the world ranking and 1st in the Republic of Korea. There was also a 3rd child in Ken's family. Kang Himgi was a high school YouTuber. She wanted to warn Geo that she should have left home because Ms. Park had found her report card from the pre-exam. Their mother was due home any minute. Ken Zio decided to leave home after all. Zio collected one report card after another with failing grades. Gio received a message from his brother on his phone. He didn't like the fact that there were 4 S-class hunters in their country, and they couldn't go further than the 30th floor of the tower. Jirok also didn't like that his sister didn't help them and stayed home and played games. Gio decided to tell her brother that she was reading novels in addition to playing games on her phone. Jirok was angry at his sister's behavior. He thought she was a drone. Contract star Destiny's Reader believed that this was a harsh way of putting it, but it was factual. Of course, there was a reason why the idleness and seclusion of the first rank was not condemned. Babylon's network automatically expanded the server of each country depending on how many awakened different classes it had. The number of tickets issued per country depended on the size of the server. The number of tickets coincided with the number of awakened ones. There were not many awakened people in their country. High-level awakenings in this era were more valuable than nuclear weapons in the past. South Korea was a weak country, so Babylon received it coldly. Therefore, Korea was well aware of the value of high-level awakening. Korea in the past was the true embodiment of hell on earth. Monsters attacked every day. Conventional weapons could not defeat them. Every day, the military asked us to send someone to help, but no one seemed to hear them. An unexpected fault. There were not enough hunters. Damages that grew exponentially. But everything changed in an instant. When the first awakened S-class appeared in the Republic of Korea, it was at this moment that the favorite of fate appeared, the forced discovery of Stigma. The final constellation whispered to its only incarnation that a rift was about to occur. Gio was shocked by this information. It was hard to believe that a fault was possible. Gio received a message on his phone that a fault had been detected. A gate that suddenly appeared was also recorded. Every citizen was urgently asked to go down to safe places and leave the area where the fault occurred. Ken Gio stood there and just looked at the gate, which opened unexpectedly. Gio noticed that desert spiders began to crawl out of the gate. They did not move one by one, so it would be difficult to defeat them. There was a commotion in the street. People started running away from the area where the monsters were to a safer place. People believed that there was a constant turmoil on the Korean peninsula. The Korean police asked us to go carefully to a safe place. Everyone had to follow the instructions. They also asked to report if they saw any wounded. Kang Gio was going to go home, but she was asked to go to a safe place because it was dangerous to move around the city on her own. An elderly woman began to approach Ken Gio. She wanted to take her to the building because she thought that she was afraid. But Gio explained that she could not go with her because her mother and younger brother and sister were waiting for her at home. But the woman did not listen to Gio. She simply took the girl's hand and led her away. Ken Gio believed that this was Korean kindness. A rescue suppression team arrived at the site of the fault. Agent Kwon Gyong was confident that they would be able to close the gate quickly, but he was informed that the gate could not be closed. A child was left at the station. Subul's mother begged to save him. She was desperate. Suddenly, the grieving mother was told that a hunter had arrived to save her child. Ken Chio began to write Kirok. It seems that Gio's relationship with her brother was difficult. He wanted Gio to return home, but she could not return home because she was locked in this building with other citizens. Ken Gio's internet connection went down. Of course, she left the house without thinking, but she planned to return home. It will take a long time for the situation to be resolved and for people to be allowed out on the streets. If you think about it, this building was really safe to be in. Ken Gio noticed the monster. Was there really no awakened ones in this place at all? Ken Gio decided not to interfere for the time being and to sit quietly in her seat. She knew that the suppression team had arrived to close the gates. One of the monsters was approaching the building. The police started to panic. They decided to use weapons to defend themselves against the monster. A loud explosion rang out on the street. They were approached by Kwon Gana, a Dapayudasru class hunter from the first rescue team of the suppression. She asked them to come to their senses and start holding the barricade properly. Ken Gio noticed Kwon Gyong, who was directly subordinate to Captain Kim Shigyun. Gio was surprised that they sent a Yatweek class hunter to the 5th level dungeon. For Ken Gio, this meant that she could stay out of the way and wait for the whole thing to end. The police did not understand why they did not close the gates if the suppression team had arrived long ago. But one man explained that the gate was opened because of a child who was at the station. An F-class hunter went in search of him. For a long time, it was not possible to rescue the hunter, but no one went into the fault because it could close by itself at any moment. If the gate closes, no one can get out. That is why even the D-class did not enter the gate and did not try to help save the child. Everyone believed that if the F-class hunter managed to get out, he would be a hero to everyone. The rescue team insisted that it was time to close the gate. After that, Kwon Gina said that she would go into the fissure because there was a person there. But if they want to close it, let them close it. She will go in anyway. While the rescuers were arguing with each other, one of them noticed that the hunter had left the gate with the child. The medics rushed to help the child and the hunter. In any case, they had to be examined. Everyone looked at the hunter in amazement. It was hard to realize that an F-class hunter was able to escape from a place that was teeming with monsters and save a child. Kwon Gyeong thought he was a hero. The hunter was talking to the girl, and Kwon Gen interrupted their conversation. She wanted to know the hunter's name. Baek Do-hen was the hunter's name. Everyone was curious to see the hero who saved the child. Everyone began to applaud Baek Do-hen. Kenjio also clapped her hands in joy, not because of the hunter hero, but because it was finally over and she could go home. Jio was not the only one who wanted to return home. Everyone wanted it. The hour was late. Since there was no longer a threat, people were quickly released. Kenjio had a new feature, an attention magnet. She didn't understand why she had this trait. She just decided to ignore it and go home to write in her diary and go to bed. But Kenjo did not manage to get home safely. Baek Do-hen caught up with her. He asked for help. Baek Do-hyun explained to Jio that if she left, Kwon Gyeong would die, and not just her. Most of the people in the place would die. Kang Jio looked at the man in surprise and couldn't understand why he had come up to her. Baek Do-hen continued to talk about the deaths of hunters and civilians. Everyone will die helplessly. The hunter said that the entire area of Solon Station would become one big place of eternal sleep. It was only now that Baek Do-hen realized why Kyung-jo had been keeping to herself and being alone all the time. He said that manticores and third-class monsters were about to appear. But there were mutants among them who were as bad as the second class. Baek Do-hyun hoped that Kenjo had a way to test the veracity of his words. Kenjo was surprised that the boy knew who she really was. Jio was the king of magicians. The hunters and the rescue team tried to close the gate, but all their attempts were in vain. Baek Do-hen gave his name so that Kenjio could check it out. Jio began to familiarize himself with the information about the hunter. Baek's rating was low, belonging to the F rank. By nature, Baek was a brave defender with a kind soul. Baek had the second level of time reversal and was a hero of the failed world. He had the abilities of magic, strength, and defense. Kenjio was interested in the title of hunter, the hero of a failed world. Baek Do-hen hoped that now Jio would believe him. Baek Do-hen decided to ask if Jio would help him, and so Kenjio decided to help Baek, but she only had one condition. When they were done, they would never see each other again. But if it does happen that they meet, Baek must not speak to her, otherwise she will simply destroy him. These words shocked Baek. Jio felt angry because Baek was not just a hero, he was a regressor. She didn't know what world he had fallen from, and didn't understand why people like Baek existed at all. Kang Jio thought that if she got involved with Baek Do-hyun, she would get into a lot of trouble. So she wanted to deal with the split quickly and start avoiding Baek. The young man sat in his room and watched Kang Jio. He realized that the shockwave would be big. The shockwave was used very rarely, so they had to penalize him. Jirok couldn't understand why the Jio constellation had fined her. He believed that the idiot was babysitting his sister. The boy didn't like that Jio didn't fight because she was lazy. He thought that this time Jio was worried about what people would think of her. But that was just his guess. Jirok heard someone's voice outside the door. It was his mom. She was calling someone about Jio. Her brother liked to make fun of his sister, so he filmed his mom's conversation. Ken Jio had the ability of a chief librarian, the only true embodiment of a girl. She wanted to document all the information within a 1-kilometer radius. The girl asked Baek Do-hen to tell her everything and to keep no secrets. Ken Jio edited the future. Baek finally saw her ability with his own eyes. After the end, Kang Jio immediately decided to run away and finally asked him not to meet Baek Do-hen again. But the boy wanted her to stay for a while. A 1,000-year-old reader's radar told Jio that protagonists like Baek were glued to the world's most powerful. Jio believed that Baek was going to pursue her to the end of time and get the glory at Jio's expense. Finally, the internet appeared. Jio immediately received a message from his brother. It was a video of my mom making arrangements with the Bunda Temple in Gangwon-do. She wanted to send Jio there. Jio didn't want to go to the temple, so she turned to Baek and asked if he had money and a house. Baek was clearly not expecting this. Baek Do-hen couldn't understand why Kyung-jo was asking him about home. What he heard next shocked him. Jio asked to stay with him. At that moment, Baek Do-hen remembered his past life. He remembered how his friend Ken Jirok was injured in a fight with monsters. It was painful, but he smiled. Ken Jirok asked him not to tell anyone about what Baek had seen. He didn't understand what Jirok was talking about. Baek Do-hen saw something coming at him. He wondered if it was a giant monster, but then he saw the king of the wizards flying toward him on a dragon. Kenjio approached Baek and asked him to tell her honestly if he had killed Jirok. Baek said that he hadn't inflicted the wound, but that Jirok died because of him. In a past life, Jio also researched Baek's file. Although he was a defense attorney with a kind soul, he was a nuisance to everyone around him. In this life, Baek Do-hen did let Jio live. He bought her a toothbrush and some basic necessities. When Baek came back from the store, the first question Jio had was why he had an easy password for the Wi-Fi. Her second question was whether Baek had remembered to buy ice cream. Before he gave her the ice cream, Baek asked her to promise that Jio would brush her teeth and put her socks away. Jio looked at Baek with a displeased expression. She was too lazy to do anything. Beck explained to Gio that she ate sweets, so she needed to brush her teeth to prevent cavities. He also wanted to give her clean clothes, but Gio assured him that she was comfortable in her clothes. Joe decided to just grab the ice cream from Beck. She could have just given it back. How can a person who left home live now? A screen appeared in front of Gio, reporting that the 38th floor had been cleared in South Korea. The Morning Star Guild rang the bell. The Republic of Korea had lifted the ban on the 39th floor of the Babylon Tower. Perhaps Gio and Jirok's relationship was not good enough, and it seems that he was worried about his sister. Before going to bed, Gio received a message from her brother. He asked why Gio was not coming home. Gio didn't know what to do next, but she hoped she could get out of it somehow. Of course, it was late in the evening, but Gio decided to ask Beck if he was living alone. Beck lived alone. He had no family. He never had any brothers or sisters, and his mom and dad died in an accident when he was young. Until high school, his father's brother lived with his uncle, and then Beck decided to leave and start living on his own. But why Gio started asking him about his family was unclear. Gio explained that she was in a stranger's house, so she decided to find out something, but she was also a stranger to Beck. Beck didn't even know her name. It was a shock for Gio. He had regressed and didn't even know her name. It seemed to Gio that they were not close at all in their past life. They had spoken only once in their past life. From the day he saw her, he never forgot Gio's back. Beck did not immediately understand what she was talking about. Gio was telling Beck her name so that he would know it in this life. Morning. Babylon Hunters Guild. Since the morning, Jirok has been trying to contact Gio, but Gio did not answer the phone. Her behavior was starting to make her brother nervous. As Jirok was trying to contact his sister, Sejong, the deputy director of the Babylon Guild, quietly entered the office. He was ranked 12th in the rankings. Sejong wondered if Jirok was not speaking for his older sister, who had tried to join the Babylon Guild 3 times. Jirok was ashamed of his sister, so he asked Sejong to keep his voice down. Ken Jirok believed that it was not only her fault that Gio could not get in. Of course, Gio hadn't been paying attention to her studies, but she was innately smart enough. He thought that someone was deliberately trying to prevent Gio from joining the guild. Sejong decided to change the subject and discuss the news of the day. But Jirok continued. He asked Hyun to find out some information about why his sister was not accepted into the Babylon Guild. Hyun was from the influential Jebel family. Therefore, she could know more than Jirok. Sejong couldn't understand why Jirok suddenly started talking about his sister. At the same time, Jirok realized that the deputy director was changing the subject like the flow of water. Ken Jirok could not help but shout that his sister had run away from home. The boy was desperate and felt guilty for her running away. But Sejong was sure that Gio had every right to go wherever she wanted because she was an adult. But Jirok claimed that the deputy director did not understand the situation. Spring frosts were about to begin, and Gio had left home lightly dressed and had no money on her. The others still did not understand Jirok's emotions. The boy cried because he did not know where his sister was and whether she was okay, and because others did not understand him. Sejong began the meeting. The topic they would discuss was the official proposal for cooperation between the 5 major guilds that would be cleaning the 39th floor of the Tower of Babel. On the same day in the morning, Beck told Gio that he would be away from home for the entire week. For Gio, this information was unexpected and shocking. She did not understand what about the food. Beck said that Gio could cook for herself. Gio was annoyed. What about the ice cream that Beck bought her every day? Who would clean and do the laundry while he was away? She also couldn't figure out who would fulfill all her whims and play games with her. Baek Dohan told Gio that if she didn't eat lying down, she wouldn't need to do laundry often, and insects wouldn't come to eat the crumbs. He also assured her that if she didn't stop eating lying down, she might get diabetes or some other disease. Gio was outraged that Beck would leave her and not even leave money for the hospital, but he didn't tell her that. Beck noticed that Gio was like a spoiled little girl who made everyone nervous with her behavior. Because of the girl's behavior, Beck started to get angry. Did Gio think she was going to talk to him nicely and that was it? Beck thought it was gaslighting. He asked Gio to sit down and talk to him normally. Kenjo was so annoyed that she shouted at Beck that he couldn't even salt Twinjang Chigai properly. Only after she said that did she realize that she had gone too far. Beck was upset by Gio's words because she was saying something completely different. She was praising the food and saying it was delicious. Beck let her in and took care of Gio, but he never heard her thank him. The recipe for Twinjang Chigai was by the famous Korean chef Baek Jongwon. He even used veal for this dish. The boy was sad. Gio's words really hurt him. Gio decided to take it back, so she said that Beck had really made a delicious meal. Of course, it was sweeter than it should be, but it was still delicious. Besides, Gio was sure that the next time the dish would turn out better. Beck decided to analyze everything and try to cook better. Gio was curious to know where Beck was going for the week. A message appeared in front of Gio that the brazen ability had been improved by 1 level. The conditions for the second specialization were met. She was also asked if she wanted to evolve into a cheater targeting pros. Beck received a ticket to the Tower of Babel. The sign of Babylon was imprinted on his hand. It showed the time left until the tutorial. Usually the mark was gold, but its shades could vary due to the way it was obtained. Gio was surprised. Didn't Beck have a contract star? Beck explained that his contract star was sealed. Before the regression, he had agreed with the contract star that they would choose each other when they met. Gio looked at Beck in surprise. Does he really believe in this? The stars were constantly different from each other, so she might not choose him. Beck explained that he didn't believe in the star, he believed in himself. He wanted to go down this path again, no matter what happened. He was sure that he had no reason to change his beliefs even after he regressed and said goodbye to his star. Gio looked at Beck carefully and realized that if things went on like this, she would remain in the position of an imba assistant to the main character of the Guardian of Order. Contract star Gio, a fortune teller, irritably asked the girl to behave normally before he got really angry. He shouted loudly for Gio to open her eyes, but there was no halo. Gio realized that it was a repeat tutorial. She wished Beck good luck and then hid under her blanket. Beck was surprised by Gio's behavior. Did she really go to bed already? Star Gio warned that before Beck showed himself so blinded by jealousy and ready to get his hands dirty, she should go home. Gio asked the star to shut up. She didn't want to listen to her star anymore. The contract star appeared in the room next to Gio. Most of all, the star liked it when Gio left a place near her despite her resentment. The fate reader touched Gio and began to talk about regression. He could never put her through such unnecessary torment. In the morning, news anchors delivered news from the world of hunters from the Good Morning Babylon channel. On the news, the anchors reported that last night the Morning Star Guild, led by Mr. Hwang Hong, the 6th place runner-up, presented South Korea with the victory bell. The 39th floor was sealed 5 long months ago and everyone was waiting. 9 circles of hell awaited the hunters on this floor. Therefore, the best hunters from each guild would be selected. The week of the tutorial was beginning. During this week, new awakened ones were to appear. All floors of the tower would be closed for the duration of the tutorial. The probability of being selected by a higher constellation increased. In the year the 29th floor opened, 2 super newcomers appeared, Mr. Ken Jirok and Mr. Hwang Hong. It was not clear whether we should expect a new S-Class hunter. For now, everyone should see one video. The hero of the Solon station appeared on the screens. Gio also decided to watch the news. Suddenly, she received a message from Jirok asking about the rating. Gio thought that her brother was just trying to catch her. The first place was taken by hunter Hwang Hona. Ken Gio was in second place. Gio felt a shock of incomprehension and surprise at the same time. Gio felt disappointed. Inside, Gio felt as if she had been pushed off a high-rise building. She wanted to be in the top spot. Her brother wanted to comfort her, but she never answered him. The day had just begun when the director was informed that he had a meeting, but the tutorial had already started, so no meeting was possible. Nothing terrible happened right there in the residence. Ken Gio sat stubbornly at the residence and insisted on meeting with her. The guards tried to explain to her that she would not be able to achieve anything with her stubbornness. The guards explained to her that without an appointment, Gio would not be able to pass. It was necessary to maintain public order. The guards warned that if Gio continued to behave like this, they would have to take her out. But Gio warned the guards that if they touched her, they would get silver bracelets with a chain on their hands. Behind Gio stood Bom, the Lord of Spirits. He was in 7th place in the ranking of the Republic of Korea. He asked the guards to go to their respective workplaces and he would deal with Gio himself. Bom had given Gio a key card, so he didn't understand why she was making a fuss at the entrance. Joe explained that she had lost the card. Bom decided to put the key card on her phone so she wouldn't lose it again. Tai had never seen Bong wearing these clothes before. Gio assured him that Bom just hadn't seen her in a long time, and that she had had these clothes for a long time. Bom claimed that Gio was hard to catch. She came to him for the first time in 4 months wearing men's clothes and tried to convince him that they were hers, even though they were not the right size for Gio. Gio decided to say that the clothes were Ken Jiroka's, but Bom knew Bambi's scent very well, so he knew it was just an excuse. Gio explained that she had come to see Bom on business. But Bom had to prepare for the tutorial, so he didn't have any free time. Gio was surprised to hear that the preparations had already begun, because she thought Bom just didn't want to talk about her problem. Of course, Bom knew exactly why Gio came to him. She wanted to ask him to give her back her first place in the ranking. Bom asked Gio to wait for him to change, and then they would go to the tower together. Bom also noticed that Gio should eat better because she had lost a lot of weight. Gio liked Bom. The fortune teller began to tease him. He was sure that Bom was deliberately showing off for Gio. The fortune teller didn't understand why he would put on such a show. If Gio had been 10 years older, Bom would not have rejected her that day. The fortune teller began to nod. Bom may have been an asshole, but he had a conscience and common sense. Gio did not like the behavior of the contract star. She believed that the star was putting spokes in her wheels. Bom was ready to go to the tower, so he asked Gio to come with him. Silver Lion Guild, the largest guild with the strongest bayonet power. The guild had the longest history. The leader of the guild was the Lion In Seokwon. He was a great man. In was firmly in first place in the country until Joe's debut. A Korean man who overcame all the challenges on his way like a great general. He always went to the front line to confront disasters. Gio thought he could have won first place, but she didn't understand how he could have taken the first place from the unfortunate 3-time applicant. Bom explained that In just hadn't learned to think about Gio's laziness yet. Gio got angry and wished In would get sick. Bom just let out a big sigh. All Gio knew about Bom was that as a child he had been wandering the streets until In Seokwon picked him up. She didn't know how old Bom was, but judging by his appearance, Bom was a little over 30. The large tattoos on Bohm's back appeared after he personally found the Great Polar Witch. It was proof of his power. Everyone knew that Bohm was a powerful man with a few tricks up his sleeve. After the fame and recognition of the right hand as the son of the Silver Lion some 10 years ago, Bohm Guardian Zhou of the first awakened S-Class came into the spotlight. Bohm was one of the few people who knew Zhou's true identity, which may be why she was so stubbornly opposed to Bohm. This morning, Ying explained to Bohm that there were no more walls to overcome. It was the last roar of the lion before its sunset. So Bohm asked Zhou to show at least a little respect. Everyone knew who was really the top. Zhou asked Bohm not to suck up to him. When Ying resigns and the guild director is replaced, it will be necessary to destroy the Silver Lion building first. These words of Zhou's scared Bohm a little bit. But Zhou kept talking. Then Zhou would start gossiping that Bohm was all silk on the outside, but at home he didn't even shave and only scratched his belly. Bohm just smiled and then said that it was all very nice of her. Zhou realized that Bohm would not let it go, so she went to the tower first. Bohm liked Zhou, but he thought she was still too young. The awakened ones who had received the ticket began to gather near the tower. The guard asked the girl to tell him her name and show him the ticket. The girl's name was Joan. Her mother kept telling her that only Wang Ho Jiang and Xiang could give birth to their own kind. Joanne knew that it was not necessary to have blue blood to become a ruler or a minister. Joan explained to her mother that the wise saying was carved into her heart. She would never give up her dream of becoming a hunter. But her mother explained to Joan that the world does not give the main characters first place. It relegates them to the last. It was worth looking at their world, which was filled with fights and turmoil, and those who lived inside this pyramid did not draw attention to themselves and lived to their heart's content. Joan's mom was sure that the secondary character was the winner. Joan was standing near the tower. She was sincerely happy to be walking alongside the main characters. Her mom could be proud of her. This morning, the rating has changed. Everyone was notified of this. The country has turned upside down. Everyone believed that King Zhou would be able to regain the top spot. Joan decided to become a secondary character and defeat everyone who tormented Zhou. She had to choose a nickname, but she had to choose it well, because once you choose one, you can't change it. There were indeed many people at the tower today who were participating in the tutorial. Joan thought Romy was friendly. The girls came to the basement. Joan was overwhelmed with impressions. She felt scared that so many people had come to try out for the minor character. Joan knew that the main characters were watching them, so she had to calm down. Romy brought Joan to meet the guy she had greeted at the subway. Romy told me that it was his second time here, so he could have won first place. Baek Doan introduced himself to Joan, but Joan looked at Baek cautiously. She realized that he might not be a minor character. The monitoring room of the Babylon Tower was designed for the top 100 rankers. Ha Yonsei was ranked 4th in the country's rankings and was nicknamed the White Bird. Choi David was ranked 8th in the country and nicknamed David. They were not happy that they had to drop everything and go to the tower. This was a special occasion, and that was the only reason Ha Yonsei had come to the Tower of Babel today. The 19th, 29th, and 39th floors were opened. Perhaps today the third golden generation will be born. 29th floor, the second golden generation of Bambi and the boy who liked to eat at night. But Choi David didn't realize who was on the 19th floor. Ha Yonsei decided to remind her that it was David who was on the 19th floor. It seems David kept forgetting that she also belonged to the precious S-Class. Only then did David realize that everyone would be coming from their channel. In Seokwan was definitely going to be there. As soon as the girls mentioned In Seokwan, he immediately entered the monitoring room. Right after him came Ken Jirok, who was ranked 5th in the ranking. The protagonists gathered around the monitoring room for a while. Finally, Bom and Zhou appeared in the doorway. Everyone looked in amazement at the famous Bom's right hand, the Silver Lion. One of the people present decided to make a joke and said that Lucifer himself had appeared in the room full of demons. Zhou looked at the Joker in surprise. Their logic worked perfectly. That's why Zhou didn't like smart runners. She believed that mana would be under control. It was the first time Zhou decided to visit the Tower of Babel. In connection with the tutorial, Zhou had access to every floor except the basement, but access was limited to that time. Entrance to Zhou's monitoring room was allowed. Ken Zhou looked at all the messages she was getting. She couldn't understand why there were so many messages. The contract star said that the door to the room was about to open. Upon entering the room, Zhou felt herself losing her vigilance. Her balance was off and it was confusing. Her professional freeloader. Only after she entered the monitoring room did she realize that the star had asked her to go to the tower for a reason. She noticed that several people recognized her. Zhou hoped that those who recognized her would keep quiet and not talk about her. She managed to hide the mana. The only thing that bothered Zhou was Jirok's look. Zhou was on her way to see In Seokwan. When she approached him, she only said a cold greeting. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. In Seokwan noticed that Zhou hadn't changed at all. He wondered how Zhou had been doing all this time. The girl said that until this morning, she had been doing great. In Seokwan decided to teach Zhou a lesson. He wanted her to finally start acting instead of sitting at home all the time. Zhou was well aware that others could overhear their conversation, so she put up a barrier. She asked Ying to stop being naughty if he didn't want to die before the appointed time. And Seokwon realized that he didn't have much time left. Geo opened the library and took out the Hourglass of Fate. It was a low-level ability that showed the remaining life of a particular object. Kenjio was shocked by what she saw. In Seokwon had a maximum of 2 years to live and a minimum of 1 year. The girl recalled the first time she saw Yin. It happened after her class was inspected. In Seok-kyung greeted the girl and told her that from that day on, if she had any problems, she could come to him. In Sukwon also told Geo to feel free to say whatever she wanted. It was his first time playing the role of a grandfather, so it might have seemed awkward, but they should have tried to get along. In Sukwon had lived his whole life as a hunter, so he couldn't imagine living any other way. He decided to fight until he died, even if his granddaughter didn't like it, because she wouldn't weaken even after he was destroyed in front of her. Yeonseok's words made the girl angry. She wanted to leave, but Bom asked her to stay and watch the tutorial. In the basement room, a message appeared in front of the participants. They needed to raise their name at the gates of heaven so that the stars could answer their call. The tutorial has begun. Ground floor script. The festival began to disqualify people. Geo finally waited for the curtain to rise on the tutorial. Geo received an invitation from Ken Jirok. He invited his sister to join the team, but she did not accept the invitation from him. Jirok realized that she had been avoiding him all along. Geo's behavior really hurt Jirok's feelings. For the first time in 3 days, they saw each other, and Geo did not even look her brother in the eye. Jirok thought that his sister was the worst person he knew. Jirok noticed that Geo was wearing men's clothes. He could see the shock on his face. Did Geo really spend the night with a man? This discovery began to confuse Jirok, so he asked his sister to explain everything. Geo said she had a friend with a big body. You could see the fear in his eyes. He didn't want to die, so he begged to be left alone. Enough people had already died. The man was asked to calm down and explained that no one would die in the tutorial. Baek Do-heni explained to the man that it was just a process that was pushing out their humanity, and apologized, then destroyed it. For this, Baek received 50 points. This time, Baek decided to take the highest place and climb to the top faster than anyone else. He also wanted to find and destroy Kiddo. In his past life, Baek just stood there and watched Geo fly away on a dragon. But then he decided to ask why the King of Mages decided to turn his back on humanity. She was not indifferent. A man like the King of Mages could return to humanity for only one reason: Kiddo. Baek Do-heni received the first title of Judgmental Sword and moved to the Awakening stage. The star that destroyed evil and protected order began to look at Baek. Hwang Hong, an S-class hunter, was nicknamed the King of Night Meals. He was not satisfied with the Golden Generation. There was only one big gold nugget. He decided to ask who this guy was. Hwang Hyun was told that the news had written about him as Baek Do-hyun, the hero of Solon Station. But Hwang Hyun just looked at his friend in surprise. He decided to ask him if it was true. Did Hwang Hyun really want Baek Do-hyun for his collection? Hwang Hong's friend was sure that Baek hadn't even seen the edge of the King of Magic's clothes. But Hwang Hyun asked him to calculate how much Baek Do-hyun would cost anyway. Choi David decided to approach Kyung-jo, but Hwang Hyun tried to stop her. Did David forget the rule of the runners? They had no right to violate the privacy of people from the same channel. Hwang Hyun also explained to David that if she approached Geo just like that, everyone would only look at them. Hwang Hyun's words made David very angry. David pulled out a card and explained that she and her grandfather, the Silver Lion, went to a squash club. In other words, they were in a relationship where David could come up and talk to her at any time. Urgent message in the Babylon Tower. Technical work was carried out on the server. For this period, the effect of the security wall is temporarily limited. You should be careful. The second channel broadcast urgent news that 3 gates had opened simultaneously. A 4th class fault in Namyaju, and on Mount Pukan, and in Suwon, the 2nd class. Hunters had responsibilities. In Seokwang decided to ask if Geo had any idea why the Tower of Babel had prepared such a monitoring room. Geo understood that it was to single out the stronger ones and pump them up. In Seokwang explained that monitoring is needed in case of unforeseen situations. If the target was a newcomer, everyone would be sent to defense. This was the first time it happened, not a very good sign. You can't lose newcomers because they were the future. Ken Jirok understood perfectly well what was going on in the Silver Lion's heart, but it was impossible to stop the tutorial or interfere with it. They needed someone's personal ticket to be able to help the newcomers. Jirok grabbed his sister's hand. Geo had a free pass. It was a gift from the stars. Ken Geo was very unhappy that she had a ticket. She thought that it could have been better hidden so that others could not see it. Contract star Geo, the reader of fate, said that if you have such an opportunity, you should completely empty the pockets of Babylon. So a quest was started for Geo. If Geo completed it, she would receive a reward. Her skill level would increase by 3%, and the scenario development buff was to increase 5-fold. The giant monsters attacked the newcomers and destroyed them. Joan was scared and did not understand how it could be that monsters were roaming around. Joan began to remember how they had been told about a tribe of cannibals who had monsters performing during the tutorial. The humanoid monsters were supposed to be there to help the awakened ones get rid of their doubts during the destruction. But the monsters that appeared were strange and did not look like human beings at all. Frightened, Joan began to call for help. She did not want to die. Joan ducked when she heard the giant fall down next to her. Joan couldn't understand why she was hearing the rustling of book pages, but when she looked up, she saw Ken Gio, who had just saved Joan's life. Memories from the first round to Beck Dohany's regression. Joan was interviewed. At first, Joan was asked a question that interested many people. Joan was a first-class AA healer, yet despite this, she continued to claim to be someone's follower. So many people were curious to know if there was a reason for this. But Joan was in no hurry to answer and asked the reporter a question as well. She wondered why the reporter thought people loved hunters. The reporter did not understand whether there were people who did not like the characters. Joan assured him that there were indeed such people. For her, this person was special. It was this person who became a hero for not Joan. Joan managed to survive the attack in Incheon. The girl claimed that after being rescued, she remembered much less details than she thought. When Joan was in a moment of despair and thinking that the end of her suffering had come, she noticed a radiance. Every particle of the radiance that touched her face still remains in her memory. Joan was sure that if she forgot about her savior, she would lose her humanity at that very moment. All she wanted was to live like a normal person, not a cool person. The scene of the tutorial is inside. Baek Do-hyun spotted Joan doing something in the river. Beck thought that Joan was hungry and was fishing. He decided to approach her. Baek Do-hyun noticed that Joan had excellent survival skills. She assured him that she was not fishing for herself. If someone was exploiting Joan, she needed help. But Joan assured Beck that nothing of the sort was happening. Beck was surprised that the girl was fishing for someone of her own free will. Did someone ask her to do it? But Joan kept saying that no one asked her or forced her to do it. Joan explained that she didn't know why she was fishing and that her body was moving. Beck thought the man was a scoundrel, but Joan asked him not to touch the man. Beck also thought that Joan was brainwashed. Beck decided to help the girl carry the fish. Joan asked him not to touch the person for whom she was fishing. Beck believed that this person had mental abilities, so he would have to do a good job. The guy wanted to meet with this person alone and just get rid of the scoundrel who used people. Joan ran happily to Gio. When Gio saw the fish, she was upset because she did not eat fish. Gio was very unhappy with the service in this place. Gio's words brought Joan to tears. Joan began to say that she was bad because she couldn't please Gio. Beck stood back and watched this scene. He realized that there was no mind control here. Beck had completely forgotten what Gio was like in the first round and about her fan, Joan. Beck was well aware that Joan was just following her instincts, not her body moving on its own. Gio noticed Beck and greeted him. Joyeon looked at Beck with anger in her eyes. Did they really know each other? Beck asked her not to look at him like that if she couldn't even make out a nickname that she hadn't thought much about. Beck knew it was going to be a cold night, so he should look for firewood. He looked at Joan and said that he was an old friend who would find the wood and make a fire, and that she, a stranger, should rest. But Beck's words didn't sit well with Joan. While they were arguing, Joyeon decided to take a break because she was getting sleepy. The reporters noticed an S-class ranger approaching them. It was Bambi. He quickly and skillfully took out his weapon and was ready to fight the monsters. Class 4 demon monsters modified into knights were like dust under Bambi's feet. Bambi was rapidly heading toward the boss. It seems that Jirok also had fans. He immediately hit the target with his spear. Everyone who saw the news began to squeal at his strength. In this coffee shop where everyone was watching the news was Ken Gimi, the third child of the Ken family. She decided to shame everyone and told them that Bambi already had a younger sister, so they shouldn't make a fuss. One of the girls said that Gimhee was simply not worth paying attention to because she did not care about her brother. If someone from her family was a higher-ranking ranger, she would carry him in her arms and her brother could give her pocket money. For others, Himki's family was incredible. Her brother was in the world rankings and Gimhee herself was also a hunter. Their father was also a hunter. The girls envied Gimhee. Jirok alone was a gift from heaven. The only thing they were happy about was that Gimhee's sister was an ordinary person. In this coffee shop, only Gimhee realized that her sister was just pretending to be an ordinary person. But the girls thought even Zhuyo was good. If they had been in her shoes, they would have long ago despised themselves for their own inferiority. Gimkan's friends decided to make fun of her. They said that Gimhee herself was not inferior in any way. She had more than 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. One of the girls was very excited to report that Bambi had 300 million followers on Instagram. If Gimhee gets the support of her brother, her channel will also have many more subscribers. The girl's words made Gimhee angry. She asked Sora to think with her own head before saying anything. Gimhee hit Sora in the face. Then she decided to go to Mount Pukon. There she saw Jeong Kilgaon. As she walked toward Mount Pukman, Gimhee was absorbed in her thoughts. It was funny to her to think that her older sister was considered ordinary. Although Gio went out for a sweep once a year, so there was some truth in these words. Gimhee couldn't understand why Gio was born as a human. She would have been better suited to be born as a cat somewhere in the countryside. A scene inside the tutorial. The runners found a cave in the settlement. Beck suggested that this cave could be a dungeon with a boss. Gio believed that it was time for her to regain her reputation and her famous name, but she was well aware that the balance could not be upset too much. The hunters were attacked by a monster, but Gio easily defeated it. Joan was delighted with Gio. She thought that Gio might be from the magic tower, but Gio did not like to talk about herself. The three hunters stood in front of a giant door. Gio believed that the boss was behind this door, so Gio decided that Beck, the butler, should fight the boss. Gio realized that the reward for winning was quite good, but she decided to give the fight to Beck. Joan began to admire Gio more and more. She did not understand how a person could be so generous. As soon as Beck started to open the door, a blood mist came out of the room. Behind him, Beck heard Joan screaming. Gio fainted, which is why Joan was screaming. She begged Gio to come too. Contract star Zio the Fate Reader hit himself on the forehead. He had forgotten to turn on the resistance to mental attacks. Zhejiang University Dankook Station is the final stop for this train. Gio fell asleep on the train. Her dad started to call her a princess and asked her to wake up. They were asked not to forget their belongings when they left the car. Dad took little Gio's hands and got off the train. Gio decided to remind her father not to call her a princess because she was a king. Dad smiled at Gio and said that it was impossible not to call the most beautiful person in the world a princess. And he explained that in her father's eyes, she was the best. But Gio was sure that being a king was better than being a princess. Gio was sure that the king did nothing at all, but he was the strongest. Everyone worshipped him. Dad was sure it was too much vanity. Gio's mom was always saying that her dad was hopeless, so they had to try to get out of it themselves to live a reasonable life. Dad decided to put a mask and a hat on Gio, but it made her feel stuffy, so she didn't want to put it on. Dad explained that Gio hadn't fully recovered from the cold yet. If she gets sick again, her mom won't let him come home. Gio always helped her dad. Her grandmother was calm when she was with her father. Her grandmother was always telling Gio that her father was a hunter, so it was not so difficult for him to give money to his mother-in-law. Perhaps she also wanted to go to the Maldives like others did. Gio's grandmother constantly reminded her that her father had no parents, so her grandmother raised him as her own. Gio's mom and grandmother were constantly fighting with each other for such conversations, but Gio's dad kept asking him to understand his grandmother. The old lady was just lonely, and that's why she was acting like that. Gio did not like her grandmother. As soon as they came to her, the grandmother immediately began telling Gio's father about a new clinic that had opened nearby. She explained that the director was a well-educated man with a lot of money, so they had to hurry because their grandmother wanted to get through all the procedures in time. Gio's father explained that little Gimhee was going to start kindergarten this year, and things were not going well at home, so it was worth postponing everything. But my grandmother did not give in and insisted that it was impossible to postpone. Everyone went to the procedures, only she stayed at home. Gio's father tried to explain what he meant, but his grandmother started yelling at him. She thought that if Dad was a hunter, he should spend all his money on her. Ken Thiessen is an E-class hunter. In reality, Thiessen had almost no money, but it was hard to get away from his irrepressible mother-in-law, so he took her to the clinic for procedures. My grandmother rejoiced like a little child. She told everyone around her that her son-in-law was a hunter. Dad asked Gio to wait for them. As soon as Gio sat down on the miracle, a woman started talking to her. She thought that little Gio had come to this place alone, but Gio explained that this was not the case. The woman thought that Gio went to first grade because she was very small, but Gio was in third grade. The woman thought that Gio did not grow because she did not eat enough, but Gio herself never understood this. Gio said she lived in Seoul and came here every weekend to visit her grandmother. Gio would watch TV while she waited for her grandparents. Finally, Dad was coming to little Gio. She ran happily toward him. Gio was hungry, so she hoped they would leave this place now. The woman who sat on the couch with Gio all the time noticed that she was very smart. Tesson was sure that Gio took after her mother. Grandma had 10 minutes left for the procedures, so they would soon go home. The ceiling began to collapse. Tesson took Gio in his arms and held her tightly. Little Gio could not understand what was happening. She thought there was an earthquake. Tesson looked out the window and noticed that it was not an earthquake at all. It was a fault. A gate had opened in this place. The news immediately began to report on the fault that occurred in the city of Yongyin. The fault was estimated to be at least Class 2. All citizens were asked to go to a safe place. The opening of the gates caused the phones to stop working. People who were in the clinic were lucky to have a working radio. Tesson was sure that they were very lucky to be in the hospital, because they had doctors and medicine right next to them. Noticing that Gio was looking frail, Taesung immediately called for doctors. The news reported that due to an unexpected fault of Class 2 and 5, Suji and Gihin districts were cordoned off. Yongyan City Gihin District, Pakjeong Street Korean Medicine Hospital, e.g. 1 hunter and 12 civilians. 6 hours passed in isolation. After the injection, Gio's fever began to subside and the disease was going well. There were screams coming from the corridor. One of the men could not understand why Thiessen was sitting inside the building. The monsters began to make their way inside the building, but the man was told that if he had to, he should leave. Outraged, the man began to object. Why would he go outside if there was a hunter among them? The doctor asked Thiessen to ignore the man, but Thiessen realized that the man was right. The hunter was among them. He asked him to take care of Gio and his grandmother. On the street, the monsters were chasing the boys. They tried their best to run away and find a hiding place. One of them was being chased by the monsters. His friends asked the boy to take off his jacket to be able to escape. On March 24, it was 12 o'clock 25 minutes. 20 hours of isolation. Screams came from the street. The young men were begging for help and hoping that someone would open the door for them inside. If they lingered until then, the monsters would destroy them. Finally, the door opened and the boys were asked to come in quickly. The young men explained that they were studying at a university nearby. They were hiding in a coffee shop, but the monsters broke the window and entered the room, so they had to run away. People started asking if there were any rescue operations, but the young men assured them that everyone was thinking only of themselves. The Silver Lion came out to destroy the monsters on Saraksan and Heda in Ijong. The young men said that many people offered to go to a rally against the guilds that did nothing, but first they needed to survive. Ken Teeson didn't want to leave his sick daughter, but when he heard people talking in the other room, he decided to go outside. Little Gio started screaming and begging her father not to go. Tai-sung leaned over to Gio and began to reassure him that he was not going anywhere and that everything would be fine. The women looked at Gio and realized that he did not need to go anywhere. He could not leave his daughter. Even though Tasan was a hunter, he was alone. It was also dangerous for him to go outside. March 25th, 2 days in isolation. Tessin was sitting next to his daughter and constantly reassuring her. He began to talk about how he and her mother were worried that Gio didn't know how to cry, but she was doing quite well. Tae-sung tried to explain to Jo that her father was a hunter, that heaven gave him the power to save people and destroy monsters. He reminded her of a report she had done for school, about how proud she was that her father was a hunter. But Gio still did not want her father to go. She claimed that the heavens gave her father too little strength. Gio said that she was only pretending to be strong, but she was really scared. Gio hated her grandmother who suggested she come to the hospital. She also hated the people who looked at her dad strangely. She was also afraid of the strange sounds the monsters made. She assured her dad that she could handle it if he was there. Gio begged him not to leave her alone, but her father was silent. Gio asked him to say something. Taesong hugged his daughter and asked her where she got her strength and eloquence from. Gio was sure that at least her father told her so. Gio was the most precious treasure to Taesong. He cherished her very much. When Gio woke up, she noticed that her father was not there. She first asked her grandmother where her father was, but her grandmother did not answer. Then Gio asked the doctor, but he was also in no hurry to answer. March 26th. It was the third day of isolation. Ken Teeson is an E-class hunter support. He agreed to go out to call for help. There were no other volunteers. Little Gio had a high fever. Her grandmother begged for Gio to regain consciousness. The doctor told her that if the fever did not go down, Gio would die. The doctor's words upset the grandmother. Gio was in a room with books scattered everywhere. She could not understand where she was and how she got to this room. Picking up the paper, Gio noticed formulas on it. She heard a voice assuring her that these were indeed the formulas of her essence, although there was a possibility that his imprint was still there. Gio looked at him in surprise and did not understand who was talking to her. He missed the fearless Gio. She was in the subconscious world inside him. Picking up a pen, Gio began to write a letter to her parents. She thought she had been kidnapped, but the man asked her to put down the pen because he was not the kidnapper. He could not understand why the righteous did not tell the whole world about their encounters with higher beings. Gio continued to stare at him in amazement. Could it be a constellation? Gio remembered her father telling her about beings who chose some of the awakened and gave them power. The authorities called them constellations. Little Gio wondered if her dad also had a constellation, but the star did not choose Taeson. The stars were of little help to anyone. In front of Gio was a star. He happily hugged Gio and asked her to reconnect with him. The star was ready to give Gio anything if she would sign a contract with him. One word was enough to make the whole world, and the star belonged to Gio. So he asked Gio to simply say yes. But instead, Gio said she did not want to sign a contract with the star, but she still had thoughts of accepting the star's offer. He looked through Gio's memories of the day her father told her about the constellations. Star realized that Gio didn't agree because of her father's Ken Tai-sung. Gio was upset that he read her thoughts, but the star explained that he was reading all of her thoughts as if they could exist separately. Gio was a real golden mean, but she still tended to be more of a good person. Little Gio thought the star was a fool. She wanted to have power, but she didn't want to be a hunter. Was that really a good thing? All those looks that were directed at Gio's dad scared her a lot, but the star was sure that Gio's feelings were worthless. The star's statements offended Gio. He explained that Gio will be able to show strength only when she wants to. The choice will always be hers. Just let her imagine that she is a king from a fairy tale. Wealth and power, victory and honor, omniscience and omnipotence. The triumph of an ordinary man cannot last longer than the allotted time, but Gio's will last forever. As soon as Gio wants it, the whole world will be at her feet. The star said that if she wishes, even death will not have power over Gio. Would there be anyone who would dare to grumble at the throne built by force? The star assured Gio that the world should be grateful just for her existence. He assured her that she could do nothing, just like the king that Gio dreamed of becoming. Didn't Gio accept this offer? All the reasons for her desire to become king coincided. Lazy, cruel, fickle, and selfish. Nothing could be done about the fact that Gio was destined to be a tyrant. Gio did not like the fate reader. He said whatever came into his head. The star kept talking. Gio could have fun every day, but sometimes she had to look in the tower. He explained that the restrictions in the tower were looser. Gio just looked at him in surprise the whole time. It would be many days before their next meeting. After the contract was signed, they would only be able to keep in touch through Babylon. Gio couldn't understand why. Star explained that they had different ranks. The fortune teller explained that after signing the contract, Gio would not have to take part in the race for the championship among the awakened that had been going on throughout his life. Gio will remain number one until she dies. He emphasized once again that Gio could really do whatever she wanted, absolutely anything. Gio would really be that strong. I had to hurry up and make a decision. If Gio agreed to the deal, she would be able to protect her father. It was only for his sake that Gio agreed to sign with the star. Rising above the earth high up to the stars, Gio and the Fiat Reader had to make an oath of soul and being. So the star asked Gio not to be afraid. According to the ancient vow, they were to share one fate between them. The fortune teller was to watch over Gio until she passed away. They made a contract. The star was happy because this Gio was his too. April 1st. Patient Ken Gio finally regained consciousness. Her mother was next to her. She was happy that her little girl had finally regained consciousness. Gio's mom kept telling her that everything was fine from now on. Gio could not understand where her father was and why he was not there for her. During this terrible opening of the gate, approximately 8,000 people died. And Seokwan lost one eye, and many of his brothers died during the fight with the monsters. Heda, who defended Lee Jung-bu, decided to step down and hand over the position of chief to her granddaughter Ha Yeon-se. Conferences were held on the streets every day with various organizations asking for forgiveness from the people. The public across the country demanded that the big guilds be punished. People called this case the Terrible March. Ken Thiessen died around March 26 at 10 o'clock 40 minutes. 2 pieces of paper were found near Thiessen's body. One piece of paper was a request to save people isolated in a Korean hospital and his little daughter. The other paper contained a will for the family. At his father's funeral, Jirok told his sister that the children of the hunters could eventually awaken as well. If he could really wake up, he could get to the top of the tower and find out why they had done this to them. Park Suna thought Tae-sung was stupid and pathetic. She didn't understand who he thought he was. His wife thought he was a worthless hunter who couldn't even make money. She did not understand who he was that dared to take care of a person she did not even consider her mother. Her mother asked Gio not to live like her father. She asked her to just live. Gio asked the star if it was possible to bring back a person who had died. The star replied that it was impossible to bring the man back. Then Gio asked what she could do. In response, Gio heard that she could seal her memories so that they would never bother her again. It was not difficult to do. After the burial, Park Suna decided to burn Ken Tae-sung's belongings. She wanted to get rid of all the things that reminded her of him. 6 months have passed. Gio sat in the living room and drew her family. Ken Gio could not remember her father's face. Gio found herself in a place where giant flowers grew. She did not understand where she was, so she thought that the star was trying to kidnap her again. But the star denied it. He explained that if it was him, he would not have brought her to such a miserable place. Gio was on Amaryllis Hill on the border mountain. He also explained to Gio that monsters with mental powers used this space for their tricks. They would pull painful memories out of the subconscious and recreate them. Gio slept very soundly and did not wake up for a long time, so the star wondered if she had a pleasant dream. But Gio didn't understand why he was asking her if he knew everything. It turned out that the naive little Gio succumbed to the sweet words of the tempter's serpent and committed a terrible sin by erasing all memories of her father. The star explained that a person is free to give and find answers for himself. That day, Ken Gio could only find one. He wondered if anything had changed in Gio's soul after the return of his memories. Not much had changed in Gio's heart. She couldn't even remember everything, so she kept her promise to her mother. Gio had to face her unpleasant memories head-on. This could have fit perfectly as the next stifling challenge if she were a hero instead of a king. After diving into the library, Gio decided to use her powers, but the use of the ability was cancelled because of the special place. The difference with the enemy's level was great. The enemy's deterrent power was cancelled. The characteristic feature of the mental type was awakened. In Gio, the ban on the hidden ability of the king's greatness was lifted. During the fight, Gio heard a voice from reality calling her. But Gio decided to continue the fight. She didn't like the fact that the little monster dared to touch the hidden ability of an outsider. At that moment, the ability of equanimity answered the call of the king's greatness and evolved into a lion's heart. Only now did Gio realize why the star had asked her to come to the tower. In fact, Gio was happy to have a one-on-one conversation with the star for the first time in a long time. But she really couldn't come to the tower often. If every time you come to the tower your strength level rises, then Gio will become a real scoundrel. The fortune teller just sat over Gio and looked at her. He knew that it was time for her to wake up, so he decided to do what he had to do the moment she walked into the room. By touching Gio, the star turned on the resistance to mental attacks. Joan did not leave for a moment and sat over Gio all the time, begging her to come to her senses. Baek Do-hyun looked at Gio in confusion. He didn't understand what had happened or why Gio had fainted. Baek felt a presence behind him. Returning, Baek noticed the guardian of Amaryllis's grave. It was a mental-type monster that could control illusions. Usually this monastery appeared after the 25th floor of the tower. The monster began to attack. Baek Do-hyun had no choice but to join the fight to protect Jun and Gio. Joan desperately tried to revive Gio, but all attempts were in vain. Baek knew that this monster was not supposed to be in the tutorial. If Baek died in this fight, this time it would be for real. The guard began to mock Baek. During the entire fight, Baek was never able to approach the guard and strike him. Joan was furious at the guard's mockery. She realized that the monster was just playing with them. Baek did not know what to do next. Baek asked Joan to continue to wake up Gio. He warned her that she should use the sacred power carefully, because if he did it wrong, Joey might not wake up at all. For Joan, this information was shocking and unpleasant. Gio might never regain consciousness again. Baek realized that if he lost the fight and Gio didn't wake up, they would all die. In theory, the strength of the blood fog of a sentinel's mental attack is directly proportional to the power of the opponent. It was enough to just look at the density of the fog around her. Beck realized that he had to destroy the guard immediately, so that maybe Zio could come to her senses. But before Beck could even attack, the monster attacked him. Beck fell to the ground. Joan ran up to Beck. Tears rolled down her face. She begged Beck to wake up. She immediately noticed that Beck was not a minor character, so he could not have died so easily. When she looked up, she saw the monsters walking toward her. Joan felt a terrible fear at that moment. She did not want to believe that her life could end at that moment. The bloody fog began to dissipate. Zio regained consciousness. As soon as Zio came to, she immediately destroyed the guard. She thought that her new friends had survived the ordeal, so they should rest. As soon as she snapped her fingers, Joan noticed a light she had seen once before. Memories flashed through her mind. Joan and Ben had fallen asleep. While Joan and Ben were sleeping soundly, Zio decided to take the items that appeared after defeating the guard. The monsters began to attack one by one, but Zio bravely overcame them. She had a lot of strength, so she could easily win the fight. Beck regained consciousness and noticed that the weapon Zio had used in the fight was a scythe. He realized that the black dragon and this weapon were symbols of the king of mages. After the duel, Zio said that the guard had had a good time, but she was the king of the neighborhood. Zio noticed the message. Basement tutorial. The festival has begun disqualifying people. The scenario is complete. Zio's ability level has risen to the 2nd level. The rewards for completing the quest were being counted. Babylon's network informed the whole world about the rating update. There was a change in the representative of the planets. Joe from the Republic of Korea became the planet's representative and #1 worldwide. Jirok was surprised that it was his sister who took first place. It seems that the United States began to panic. Until that day, they had been ranked first. Timothy Lillywhite was ranked #1 in the United States. He really wanted to meet Joe, although others thought that he would be upset to lose his first place. But Timothy was not upset at all. People who had completed the tutorial began to gather in one place to announce the registration of the Awakened. Zio just watched from the sidelines. After the stars choose the participants in the Heavenly Gate, the Awakened will enter the country's official training center. But Zio realized that this did not concern her at all. Zio noticed Bomb. She looked at him in surprise and then asked if he had gone to the gate. Bomb came after the gate was closed. He came to pick up Zio. Bomb wanted to give her a ride home. Bomb also noticed that Zio had done quite well. Zio did not understand what Bomb was doing when he took the old silver lion. Bomb said that his father also sent his congratulations to Zio. Bomb also noted that she was ranked first in the world rankings, which was a significant event for the people. Zio said she hated fighting, but she seemed to have a lot of fun. She was aiming for first place in the class and got it at school. It was amazing, but Zio denied everything Bohm said. In any case, he sincerely congratulated Zio on the return of the throne. It was said that a person became a star after dying. In the era of constellations, people were watched from the firmament. Zio didn't believe in these superstitions, but at least today she can afford to believe in it. Baek Do-hyun wanted to approach Gio, but Bomb beat him to it. So Baek had no choice but to watch Gio drive off in the car with Bomb. Gio was pleased to be ranked first in the world ranking. The weather was perfect for such an event. The first-class disaster. When the huge monster Balrog appeared, everyone expected a sudden end. He could destroy half the city with his breath, but the first S-class in the Republic of Korea was able to destroy the monster quite quickly. People were in awe of this man. It was Timothy's first time in Korea, so of course the reporters immediately pounced on him with questions. Timothy was excited about Joe's country. Everyone was in awe of Joe. Everyone wanted to know what she was like. It seems that only Beck, the only one among Joe's supporters present, knew what Joe was really like. Beck remembered when Joe had spent the night at his place in their first evening together. He recalled how he had to make her put on clean clothes and how she was a bully. An institution for the adaptation to the abilities of the reserve awakened in Hwaseong, Gyeonggi-do Province. For short, it was called the Fortress. This place was founded about 10 years ago. It was a terrible march. After the hunters deserted, forgetting about morality and hiding behind ordinary people as a shield, the guilds closed their doors. The government, based on its own survey, felt the need to control the Awakened after those events, and established mandatory training before registering the Awakened. A special law was issued stating that reserve Awakened ones over the age of 14 had to have a record of graduation from a training institution. This is how the Awakened ones ended up in the fortress. Once again, one of the young men fainted. A healer was needed. Joan was the healer. The students of the fortress assured him that he should have informed the instructor about the attack. This was the 4th time the young man had fainted. Joan realized that the young man had to be transferred to an isolation center. She asked for help, but no one was in a hurry to help. Joan noticed Beck in the crowd and asked him for help, but Beck decided not to help. He just walked away from the place. Outraged, Joan approached Beck and asked him to explain his behavior. Joan decided to ask if Beck was even aware that his roommate had fainted, but Beck replied that he didn't know anything about it because he was in class at the time. Beck hoped that there were no wounds. He knew that the young man had lost consciousness 3 times before, but Joan had helped him, even though she was still practicing. Joan was angry with Beck. The doctors praised her for giving excellent first aid. Beck immediately told her that he had never said that Joan had done a bad job. It was easy enough to piss Joan off. Beck seemed to know about it. Beck Dohan received a message from the training center's administration on his phone. Beck will have a new roommate named Hong Hai. Hong Hai is a hunter trainer. He had also just learned that Beck Dohan would be his neighbor. Hong Hai was not happy about this news. Beck Dohan scared him. But Hong Hai's friend didn't understand why he was afraid of Baek Do-hai. Was Hong Hai afraid that Baek would also look down on him because Hong Hai was with Ulung Do? But the reason was different. All the wake-up calls said that Baek Do-hini had scored the highest number of points in the tutorial. For the first time in history, the number of points exceeded 30,000. Hong Hai's friend was delighted with Baek Do-hin. He thought that Beck was a high-level contract star. He had also heard that Beck was related to Joe, so there was a chance that he would be accepted into the Silver Lion. Hong Hae jumped up from his seat at the shocking news and poured juice on his friend. Hong Hae also wanted to go to the Silver Lion. This place was most closely associated with Joe. The Silver Lion was good at everything, and they were good at marketing and obeying the law. Hong Hae hoped to join the Silver Lion. Then he would have the opportunity to meet Joe. But if Baek Do-hin refrained from joining the Silver Lion, it will be hard for Hong Hae to get in. It would have been better for Hong Hae to choose an opponent of his own. Even though he came at the same time as Beck, they were cut from different cloths. Didn't Hong Hae realize that Baek Do-hing's face said he was at least A-class? There's no need to be complex. It's better if Hong Hae speaks to Beck first because Bak himself is unlikely to speak first. Hong Hae's friend abruptly stopped talking. Hong Hae did not understand what had happened. Behind him, he heard Baek Do-hin's voice. Beck decided to come over and meet the boy. Beck extended his hand to Hong Hae and introduced himself. They would be roommates from today and asked Hong Hae to take care of him. Hong Hae was surprised and happy to meet him at the same time. Hong Hae's golden law, a tiny piece of the lost puzzle. Do-hin has made a decision this time before this tiny piece miserably collapses. It will lead him to his favorite little king. A sunny, warm summer morning. Two friends were just relaxing on the beach. Everything seemed to be going well until one of them started to express himself in a terrible way. The other guy didn't understand what had gotten into his friend, but the guy explained that he was in a terrible mood. But they were on a beach where many people were vacationing, so he shouldn't have used bad language, even though the guys were bad. The phone rang. Timothy called the guy in a bad mood. The conversation, of course, was about the rating and Joe. Timothy also asked if his friend was able to find the Mad Dog. Mad Dog was the nickname of a hunter who was ranked 3rd in the world rankings. The boy asked not to talk about him. Timothy asked his friend not to be upset because he couldn't find the rabid dog. They had to move towards the goal slowly. The men were to meet in New York. The Mad Dog wondered what his friend would do next. The boy thought about it and did not answer for a while. He was called the 13th month, but the boy asked not to call him that anymore. The man was saying something unintelligible, so the Mad Dog asked him to explain. Taking off his hat, the man explained that he was going to go to Seoul. As soon as he took off his hat, people began to gather around him. This man's name was Guido Marimaldi. People started coming up to get an autograph and take pictures with Guido, the greatest shield in the world created by Timothy Lilith, the son of a god, deputy head of the Aegis Guild, the tamer of Guido Marimaldi, and the head of a stateless terrorist group for 13 months. In the second place, around the same time, Kenzio was dragged to hard labor called re-entry courses. In the art room, a boy started showing Zio a picture of his older brother. The boy began to say that his brother was the real Zio. The boy's words made Zio angry. She did not understand what he was talking about. Joe was her, not the boy's brother. The boy asked me to keep it a secret because he only told Zio the truth about his brother. He thought his brother looked like Ken Jirok. Zio was shocked to hear this. The most important thing is that the boy should not tell Bambi about this. Otherwise, he will come for the young man. The boy wanted to introduce Gio to his brother. The contracted star, the reader of fate, began to get angry with the boy. He also could not understand what this young man was talking about. He believed that such a fraud could become a master in both the human and demonic worlds. A classmate came up to them. Yoon Kang-jae, have you started lying again? She told him not to listen to Yoon, who was always telling stories about Joe. The girl's name was Seo Hagen, and she was curious to meet her new classmate. Seo Hagen explained that Kang-jae Hyun was indeed a hunter and a backpacker. Gio was very surprised. It was the first time she had ever seen Kang Jae-hyun. Seo Hagen thought that Gio wasn't really interested in guilds. Hunter Kang Jae-hyun, nicknamed Yoon Iso, was ranked 29th in the rankings and was a member of the Invive Guild. But if Gio wasn't interested in hearing about guilds and hunters, Seo Hagen decided to show her her cat, Nana. After all her classmates fell behind, she immediately wrote to her brother. Gio was curious to know more about the Invive Guild, so she decided to ask Jirok. Jirok didn't understand what his sister was doing again. Jirok was very surprised that Gio was interested in the Invive Guild and Yoon Iso. They were supposed to be under Hwang Hong's supervision. Dami, the Huntress of Babylon, told Jirok that Invive did quite well in the beginning, but the King of Night Meals was a complete failure. King of the Nightly Meals was Hwang Hong's nickname. Jirok wrote to his sister that the Invive Guild was low-grade garbage. He asked her not to waste her time and to study. Jirok asked why Invive failed. Dami thought that everyone knew about this, but it seems that Kirok really didn't. Dami explained that the hunters of this guild had neglected their duty as hunters and laid low, ignoring the Great Rift. It happened in that terrible March. Jirok asked me to continue the story. Yoon Ilso was the rare case who could compete with a runner of the level of the Tamer Guido Marimaldi. The problem was that it was impossible to recruit him. But no one understood why Jirok was asking about Yun. Jirok just said that a bird sang to him. Domi asked if the bird was his older sister who had run away from home in the first place. And then, as a punishment, she was sent to a re-entry course. Domi thought it was hard to get into an art university for the third time if Jio tried to get in for the third time. Jirok explained that Jio was just fulfilling her mother's dream. She had always taken care of her family. The deputy director emphasized that we should focus on the meeting. The most important thing at the end of this tutorial was to catch one of the newcomers. The hero of Solon Station is Baek Dohan and Na-joon. It was assumed that Na-joon was at least AA grade, specializing in sacred power. According to an informant from the fortress, Baek Dohan's abilities were measured at S class. He was the card they had to get their hands on. The art teacher at the university was pleased with the students' work. Minso's painting was quite good today. Jio did not understand why Yoon Kang-jae kept looking at her. He told Jio that it was impossible to draw something like that without seeing the original. He hoped that Jio would now believe that his brother was Joe. But Jio knew that the boy was always lying. But Yoon assured Jio that he had proof. Yoon Kang-jae took out a black dragon scale from his pocket. Jio wondered where Yoon had gotten the scales. The boy claimed that his brother gave it to him. Jio began to get angry. She asked him again where Yoon had gotten the scales. The boy said with fear in his eyes that his brother had given it to him. The contracted star of the fortune teller asked Jio to calm down and take a good look at the scales. He was sure it was just a fake, although it was hard to tell at first glance. Jio was the next to show her drawing. The teacher laughed at her drawing. Was it really about monsters? Jio explained that it was a portrait of the king of magicians. It is hard for Jio to be a lonely and misunderstood artist. Bohm drove up to Jio in his car, but Jio was not in the mood to talk. Bohm asked him to get in the car anyway and quickly. There wasn't much of a choice, so Jio got into the car. She was curious where they were going this time, but Bohm just said it was a boring place. Bohm spoke as if there were not enough boring places. Jio and Bohm were on their way to a meeting at a Korean restaurant with the head of the center, managing the awakened in South Korea. The second name of the center, an institution that, together with the Republican Association of the Awakened, represents the rights and interests of the awakened. Even in a dystopian world, more people would choose justice and duty. A place where people with abilities that could be counted on one hand would come. Kim Shig-yoon, commander of the emergency response team, was ranked 9th in the ranking. Kwon Gyena, an emergency response team member, is a W-2 class hunter. Kim Shig-yoon didn't understand how a bodyguard could be afraid of the person he was supposed to protect. Kwon Gyung explained that it was not the first time Kim had seen him, and that she would be meeting this man for the first time today. Indeed, this person was very frightening. Kim explained that there was nothing more frightening about this person than the inability to see his essence. Although on the other hand, the person in the first place in the country was on top of the entire planet. The guards noticed Zio's mana. Bohm asked Zio to turn down her mana. He didn't understand why Zio was being cranky today. There were just too many people in this place and Zio was nervous. The ribs in this restaurant were very tasty. The head of the center was glad that Jio liked it. He knew that she didn't like long talks, so he decided to get right down to business. The head of the center said that this was the first time Timothy Lillywhite had visited Korea. He said that Timothy wanted to meet Joe, but Joe did not want to meet him. The head of the center thought long and hard about whether to show Timothy Lillywhite's photo, but decided to show it anyway. Jio thought it was a joke, but it turned out not to be. On the other side of the photo, Timothy wrote that he was flying to Korea and asked who was bringing Joe. Joe was angry with Timothy. The only thing she wanted to do to him was beat him up. The Republic of Korea is the country with the largest number of high-level runners in the world. SPI's Urban Sustainability Division has been a leader for 10 years. Among all the advanced countries, Korea has the lowest wastage rate. Thoughts of Timothy never left Jio's mind. She wanted to teach Timothy a lesson just because he still spoke English. But because of the tearful pleas of the head of the department, Chung Il-heen, she generously refrained. Instead of focusing on education, Jio thought it was time to make changes in Korea. For starters, it would be good to remove English from the compulsory curriculum. Jio was sad that the world was not progressing. The teacher noticed that Jio was sitting with her eyes closed, so he reprimanded her. But Jio just closed her eyes to concentrate and not to sleep. Jia was distracted from her thoughts by Gaehan. She had gone to the store and bought chocolate. Gaehan just decided to give Jio some chocolate. There was a lot of chocolate. Jio wondered why Gaehan had bought so many. Gaehan explained that this time the limited edition toy was a king of magic figurine. She also explained that today there was a special energy in the lecture hall, so she would open the chocolate here. It was amazing how Gachin's communication could easily connect people through chocolate. Jio also wanted to watch. Every time they opened it, they found something stupid. And finally, Gaehan came across the long-awaited figure of the king of magic. While opening the chocolate, the girls noticed that Yoon Kang-jae was quiet today. They doubted that the boy was telling the truth about his older brother. But one of the students assured them that Yoon Iso was indeed his older brother, so at least he wasn't lying about that. Jio looked at the figure carefully. It looked weak. No one knew what the dragon's real name was, so they just called him Ink. In her mind, Gio apologized to the dragon for not being able to protect him because she would have exposed herself. Gio was sad that the figures were made of poor quality material. As always, the girls loved to gossip. Their favorite topic of gossip was Ken Jirok. Last time, some girl pretended to be his older sister. His younger sister went on a whole attack on Instagram. Of course, Gio knew that her sister was into YouTube, but this was the first time she had heard of Instagram, although this was to be expected from modern children. When Gio saw her sister, everyone thought she was a model. Yes, she was really beautiful. The girls were delighted with Bambi. They could tell from his shoulders that his body must have been pumped up. They were very surprised to see that in the photo with Bambi and his sister was Gio. The girls began to recall that the hoodie that Gio was wearing was a limited edition, especially for Bambi, and Gio's last name was the same as Bambi's. It was uncomfortable for Gio to be with the girls at that moment. She did not understand why they were looking at her like that, so she decided to quickly say goodbye to them and leave the lecture hall. Gio almost got caught. She decided that Bambi's clothes shouldn't be worn randomly anymore. If this limited edition sweatshirt was specially made for Bambi, she should have kept a closer eye on it, or hidden it altogether. There was a forced opening of the stigmata. The star asked Gio to take 2 steps back. Notification to all low-level local channel. An unsystematic dungeon has appeared in Seoul's Jono district. A limited time quest dungeon of Tyra G. Dungeons were divided into 2 types, systemic and non-systemic. System dungeons were used for safe hunting, pharmacy of magic stones, and training. Rather than a systemic dungeon crawl, it was based on completing quests that were difficult to complete. All this was complicated by the fact that when the time limit was violated, great damage was done to the environment. So Ramen is a rapid response team from the Awakened management. He checked the documents of everyone who arrived at the site of the fault. The second clearing team from the Invive Guild arrived at the Rift site. 6 people and the mop-up team leader, Shin Jinchul, an Awakened SS class. It seems they were short on people. Shin Jinchul explained that they were supposed to send a man from the Morning Star, but he was running a little late, so Shin asked him to wait. So Ramin reminded Shin that this dungeons were limited in time, so they would not wait for anyone. Shin didn't understand why he had to be rude. He noticed the girl, so he decided to ask Tak Ramin if this little girl had come to the sweeps as well. So Ramin asked Shin Jinchul to watch what he was saying. She was a friend of the missing citizens. Shin did not understand why she was in this place and not in the hospital. Gio showed the toy and explained that she was in this place because of it. Ramin explained that the appearance of the dungeons connected the toy to the environment. This toy was a quest item that appeared among Ken Zio's belongings. With it, you could find people who were locked in dungeons. It was like a key for this quest. Shin asked how to use the key. Gio explained that only the person who received the key could use it. Their conversation was interrupted by a young man who was hurrying to the vault. It was Yoon Iso from the Invive Guild. His brother was locked in a dungeon, but they were waiting not for Yoon, but for another hunter. The commander decided to talk to Yoon alone. It was a surprise for Gio to meet Yoon Iso. She told Taku Ramin that she had to go to the donja as well, since the key was tied to her. In a good mood, talking about the big traffic jams in the city and not understanding why the situation was so tense, the hunter from the Morning Star finally arrived. Yes, this was the hunter everyone was waiting for, Hwang Hole. And his younger brother's name was Hwang Chuk. That was the duo of Hole and Chuk. In the year that the 29th floor of the Babylon Tower opened, 2 S-classes appeared. The first one is Ken Jirok, 15 years old, second year of high school. The second was Hwang Hong, who was 19 years old. He was in his 3rd year of high school. Crazy and fantastic progress and brilliant abilities. In society, such talented people were called the Golden Generation. Ken Jirok has been updating the tower's records day after day and is increasing his fame as a young boss with strong leadership skills. Hwang Hong, in turn, took over the underworld as the main underground group leader. Eventually, even Gio, who was bad at remembering people, knew his face even though he rarely appeared in the media. Perhaps the reason for this was that Hwang Hong lost 1 point and became second in the tutorial after Ken Jirok, or the reason was the constant jumping up and down in the rankings. For years, Hwang Hong had been adding fuel to the fire of his rivalry with Kong Jirok. Jirok would show Gio's photo and ask him never to communicate with him or even approach him. Gio looked at Hwang Hyun carefully. She was surprised at how much Hwang Hyun looked like Hwang Hyun. But the boy didn't understand what Gio was talking about. Gio thought that Hwang Hyun had just decided to change his name a little. Shin Qingjol noticed that an unknown person had joined the team. He didn't understand why the nickname was hidden, if hunters with their real nicknames were supposed to join the sweep. Again, a new message was knocked out to the team by Hidden 2. Shin started to get angry. So Ramin asked Shin Qingjol to calm down and explained that the team was not only hunters, but also civilians. That's why Tak Ramin suggested a random change instead of a hidden nickname. Team members had a suitable picture that matched the personality, and Babylon selected the most suitable name. It was a system that preserved the privacy of anonymous participants while solving a problem on the battlefield. Gio received the nickname Aggressive Cat before entering the dungeon. Gio was not pleased with this nickname. Huang Hole was given the nickname Tofu Gangster. This nickname made Huang Hole very angry. After distributing the nicknames, Tak Ramin decided to hold a short dungeon meeting. This unsystematic dungeon had a time limit. 10 people participated. The goal was to prevent an explosion and save people. The demonic beasts inside the Cherokee are nasty insects. You could just call them insects. The goal of the hunters was to destroy the insects and save the people. There was one special person in this dungeons who was a guide. Ms. Kenjio had a guide who helped to locate the missing people. The probability of awakening of ordinary people who had been trapped there increased. If the hunters did a good job, a new awakened would appear by the end of the sweep. Shinjin Chul was being rude to Gio, so the star of the fortune teller started to roll up his sleeves to strike Shin with the star. But Gio reminded him that stars are supposed to protect people, not hit them. Gio understood Shin Jinchul's rude behavior, but time was running out and a hunter from the Morning Star in strange clothes was sent to help. Huang Hole tried to contact Zhou, but all attempts were in vain. He didn't understand why Zhou wasn't answering. Maybe something had happened or Babylon's system was malfunctioning. Gio knew it was actually Huang Hong, but she didn't care much about him. The one she was really interested in was Yun Iso. If he was in 29th place, he could see the first channel of the runners. After a short meeting, the hunters entered the quest dungeon of the infected rift area. A detailed study of the participants and their mana began. The explosion of the dungeon was accelerated. It was unexpected and shocking, and the Donju class went up 2 levels. It went from Tier G to Tier B. There were 5 hours left before the explosion. Noise rose inside the dungeon. Commander Shin thought it was worth going outside and asking for help. They were not enough for the Tier B level. Ramin reminded that they have 5 hours left and the number of people in the dungeon has been reached, which is why the passage to the outside is closed. We need to save the citizens inside. Gio and Huang Hong believed that there were good and bad things in life, so they shouldn't be so angry about the situation. Huang Hong thought that Gio was his hidden twin because they thought alike. Huang Hong looked at Gio carefully and said that she might want to be his little sister. Gio reminded him that in his script, Huang Chuk was the younger brother, and noticed that he changed his shoes on the fly all the time. Kyungjio knew that Huang Hong was making lighthearted jokes just to be able to read her mana, but Gio knew he wouldn't be able to because she had learned to hide her mana. 10 years ago, Gio was honing her mana control thanks to Bomb of the Silver Lion. 10 years have passed since the day they first met, and Bomb announced that he wanted to be her guardian and teacher. Special Law of the Awakened Article 8, Paragraph 1. In accordance with this code, citizens of the Republic of Korea who are Reserve Awakened persons are obliged to participate in good faith in the training aimed at adaptation to the abilities. However, the exception was for those under the age of 14. Gio claimed that she was not obliged to undergo training. Jang Il-hung is the head of the Awakened Center's first department in Seoul. He just smiled at Gio. She even knew about such things. It seems Gio had studied the information well. However, Gio's case was unique and could not be left to chance. Zhang Yilheng assured me that it would be better for Gio and others if she at least received training. Gio asked him to hide her identity from others, especially her mother. Zhang Yilheng said that they were trying their best to fulfill her request. Gio also asked for individualized lessons. Gio was constantly emphasized to study. She was enrolled in many different courses and Zhang Yilheng wanted her to take more classes. She just didn't want to. Gio's star, the Fate Reader, insisted that she should accept Zhang Yilheng's offer. He explained to Gio that opening a stigmata as often as now can put a lot of strain on a small body. The fortune teller explained that if Gio's body was destroyed, the Appa's mind would be destroyed as well. But Gio was still reluctant. Today, Gio decided to go home to watch a music show. She promised to come back tomorrow after her ballet classes are over. The next day, Zhang Yilheng explained to Bam how he had barely convinced Gio to study. They agreed that she would return today, but she suddenly fainted at the ballet class. The secret agents took care of everything and brought her to the center. Gio was kept in isolation. During the medical examination, it turned out that Gio was in a state of forced blocking of energy consumption due to an uncontrollable phenomenon. The doctor explained to Gio's mother that many children suffered from PTSD symptoms after the terrible march. Gio was not spared, so she had to go to the hospital for a long period of time to treat her trauma. The state will pay for Gio's treatment. Zizio was pleased that the truth could be so easily hidden from her mother and others. Zizio was admitted to a state hospital for a long time, which the center had contacted in advance under the pretext of treating her injury. Bohm spent a lot of time with Gio. She didn't even realize that her uncle was in the first place in controlling the country. Baum looked at Gio in surprise. She assured him that he did not look strong. Smiling sweetly, Baum assured her that he was not as strong as her. Gio, in turn, reminded Baum that she was the first in everything, so there was no need to compare. Today, Gio could hardly smell Baum's cigarettes. He told her that he had tried his best for her. Baum couldn't quit smoking completely, so he asked Gio to be understanding. With the device used to contact Babylon to measure the class, the awakened Ken Gio awakened the features of the Dragon Heart Horse. The origin of mana and so on were considered to be ancient forces. The mana inside the physical body began to boil whenever there were explosions of mana. The constellation decided that the young body was being stressed, so it forced Gio to shut down. Little Gio asked the star not to do this, but he did not listen to her. Because of this, they quarreled. Bomb noticed that Gio was pretending not to care, but her body was leaning toward him. He also noticed the glances under her forehead. Bomb remembered what the report had said. The instinct for self-preservation is quite high. The person carefully avoided contact or affairs for which he or she had to take responsibility. Bomb did not understand why he did not have to really treat her injury and not just pretend to. Bomb told Gio that he would never get tired of her sleeping cute face. Therefore, it was not important to him whether she was sleeping or running. Jo was always drawing, so Bomb thought she liked it. But in reality, she didn't. Gio was not good at drawing. It was just that her mom wanted her to go to art school. She couldn't do it because of her hard life, so Gio wanted to go there and tell her mom about it. Gio wanted to prove that art university was a nonsense, and her mother had nothing to regret. Bomb was curious about what Gio had drawn. She showed him her drawing and explained that she had drawn a monster inside her. Gio asked Bomb not to come anymore. From now on, they will see each other in the training room. Ken Gio, king of the magicians, Zio. She was the personification of the lord of the magical world, who will certainly leave a mark on human history. Attack-type magic power, unlimited magic power, recovery potential that cannot be estimated, best mana induction. The training room. Gio tearfully apologized to the coach. She was in the wrong. After Gio met with the final level star, she ended up destroying all the limits of human capabilities. Monster. The Star Destiny reader began to whisper that she was not guilty. She had warned Bomb. Bomb looked up and smiled at Gio. He decided to reassure her, so he hugged her and assured her that everything was fine. Gio always wondered how Bomb became the best at control. He could control spirits who were always tormented by a fierce hunger. They could not distinguish between their own and strangers, so when they had a chance, they attacked immediately. Every day and every moment Bomb had to confront monsters. It felt as if Bomb's body was swarming with them. To coexist with such beings, you must first learn to fully control yourself. Even Bomb found it difficult to distinguish the monster inside the man. This is a truth that cannot be denied, and hunters will never be able to get rid of these labels. Bomb asked Gio to memorize it forever. She had to keep her back straight and her chin high and look forward, the basic hunter's pose. If he is not absorbed and tightens a very strong leash on his monsters and does not let go, he can become the greatest hunter. Present time. Infected area of a Dungeons class Tier B. Gio was confident that she held the leash very well. Ken Gio became so strong that she could even disguise herself as a civilian. Shin Jinchul lunged at Yoon Yiso. Shin was sure that he was the reason why things were the way they were. Gio and Huan Hong were always making fun of each other. That's how Ramen decided to stop the whole thing. They had little time, so they had to start looking for people. Huang Hong couldn't understand the Timur's behavior. The Timur was an A-class even if it had been attacked by all the monsters on it and not had a scratch. A tamer is a rare possessor of the ability to control monsters and demonic creatures. Gio believed that Yoon Iso also possessed a dragon, which was the only reason she went to the middle of the dungeon. But looking at him, I realized that I was wrong. Yoon Iso admitted that he had made a mistake, but they should do the cleanup because he had to save his younger brother. Yoon Iso explained to the others that a runner is not a team, but one person. That's why he wanted to take full responsibility. That is why he would not allow people to die and would take over the cleanup. Finally, the hunters decided to start cleaning up. The monsters that crawled inside the dungeon on their stomachs and laid eggs were parasites that did not distinguish between species and contaminated all living things. Tak Ramen said that if they did not rescue the civilians quickly, they might not return regardless of the clearing. So Tak asked the aggressive seal to show him the direction again. The figure pointed upward. It was just easier to say than to do. There were monsters everywhere, especially at the top. As soon as they raised their heads up, the monster attacked the hunters. So Remen asked to go on if everyone had already collected the magic stones. He noticed that something was happening to Yoon Yis. Yoon Yiso reported that he lost contact with the animals he had sent to scout. He heard strange interference from the 4th floor. He couldn't even check what caused the loss of communication. Perhaps the animals were killed. It was a dungeon of the bee, but for some reason it was too easy. Gio guessed that the real game was about to begin behind that door. Huang Hong decided to open the door and mocked the others, saying that they were kneeling before the monster child. A monster is a monster in Africa. But as soon as he saw the monster, he immediately slammed the door and screamed. Huang Hyun asked him to bring the Declorvos quickly. Gio thought that Huang Hyun really had a problem with his head. The contracted star of the Reader of Fate grumbled to Gio that she would only talk like that after she got off the stranger's back. So Ramin reminded the hunters that there were ordinary people among them, so the hunters would have to take the hit. The hunters were not expecting the insects to fly. Did these cockroaches really know how to fly? The hunters could not cope with the insects. One of the hunters began to ask about the strongest abilities and what time it was to use them. There was hope that someone had these powers. Gio wanted to help, but was stopped by the Fate Reader. Contract Star Zio's Fate Reader was scared. He began to calm Zio down, telling her that she shouldn't use the sickle that was created to destroy demons against insects. The fortune teller suggested that the insects should be exterminated by people with low levels or by exterminators. Gio was very upset. So Ramin noticed that Shin Jinchul started to attack in the forbidden direction. He asked Shin to move away from that corner, but it was too late. Shin Jinchul struck with his sword and hit the wall. As soon as Shin hit the wall, the entire floor began to collapse. Fear and panic gripped the hunters. Gio activated the cat parkour ability. With this ability, Gio was able to jump over the rift. As soon as Gio was on the other side of the room, the cat parkour ability was deactivated. After the jump, Gio felt that she was safe. Everyone was standing in the place where the sword had struck. It was completely quiet on the team's channel. Gio did not understand if she was the only one who survived. Gio noticed some movement. When the dust settled, she noticed Hwang Hyun. The Ice Queen was Hwang Hyun. Gio looked at him in shock. She didn't understand what kind of Ice Queen he was talking about. But when he took a closer look, he noticed that it was an aggressive cat. On the one hand, Gio was glad she wasn't alone, but on the other hand, she wasn't happy to be left with Hwang Hyun. S-rank hunter Hwang Hong. Asura's middle name is the Hungry Spirit of War. An endlessly argumentative military commander of evil spirits in Suri, Gio felt angry that this tofu gangster was left alone when everyone fell. He struck with his ability with all his might because of his indiscriminate appetite, consuming everything and everyone. There were only footprints where he had walked. This meant that the gossip was true. Now Gio understood everything. The floor had collapsed because of Hwang Hyun. Gio decided to make fun of Hwang Hyun. She took out her phone to film everything. Hwang Hyun started to get nervous and asked Gio to hide the phone, and then screamed. Behind Gio was a monster. As soon as Gio noticed the monster, she immediately destroyed it. Hwang Hong looked at Gio in surprise. It was hard for him to believe that Gio was a PSGG, a power-hiding protagonist. Hwang Hong thought it was cool. It was the best thing in the country to wake up and get into the rankings. While everyone else was showing off and pretending to be cool, she was hiding her hop. And at a time when no one expected it, the main character appeared on stage right in front of the others, hiding his true identity. This unexpected twist caused Hwang Hyun to experience a surge of emotion, and it was truly priceless. Hwang Hong was making Gio nervous. His identity was revealed in one go and his mouth still won't close. Hwang Hong was not a peaceful person. Gio noticed the timer. There were 3 hours and 40 minutes left. The channel team was still quiet. Gio decided who should be rescued first, the channel crew or the civilians. But Yoon Yiso and Tak Ramin were the ones to search for them, and they earned their living doing it. Therefore, the missing persons were more important. The higher the floor, the greater the degree of pollution. In addition, because Hwang Hong opened a demonic circle and demolished everything in his path, the place became a total wasteland. Hwang Hong asked the aggressive cat to keep everything she saw a secret. Hwang Hong said that he hadn't had such a truthful conversation with anyone except his son, but he would tell her. Gio didn't understand why this tofu scoundrel was trying to make her his comrade in arms. Maybe he was up to something. In spite of everything, Hwang Hong continued to talk. Since childhood, Joe had been his inner support and role model. The most wonderful and respectable Joe did not hold on to an image. So Hwang Hong also decided not to show his face. This was his way of thinking since childhood. Gio listened attentively, surprised that someone was following her example. Hwang Hong, who got too close, told Gio that he had guessed the true identity of the aggressive cat to some extent. Hwang Hong explained to Gio that he began to realize that she was a hunter as soon as the Danja level increased. Unlike the other hunters, Gio was too calm. There's definitely something about this little girl, Hwang Hyun kept telling himself, but his mind kept telling him that he shouldn't think about it, that she was just an ordinary person. But his S-class senses kept telling him that she wasn't. Gio didn't understand what was so special about Hwang Hyun's guessing. For Hwang Hyun, it was special that his intuition was right this time. He rejoiced like a little child that he was right. Gio thought that if Hwang Hyun's face was scanned, it would show her a result of 100% happiness. But Gio was just not happy that Hwang Hyun had found out. Hwang Hong asked that Gio call him the famous detective. Gio sarcastically called him that and wanted to keep searching, but Hwang Hyun kept talking. He thought it was strange that he didn't feel Gio's magical power at all. So Hwang Hyun asked what Gio's first title was. It didn't sound like a healer or an archer. Gio couldn't understand why his intuition worked so well. Hwang Hong was starting to annoy her. The main thing for Joe was to stay calm and think like a master escape artist. To get Hwang Hong to finally leave her alone, Gio said that she was the swordsman Hitokiri Badasai. It was a movie that Joe accidentally saw on TV as a child. Hwang Hong looked at Gio in surprise. He didn't know what Hitokiri Badasai Gio was talking about, but she was also a good swordswoman. Gio decided to turn on the acting mode of a swordsman with a sad past. Gio decided to explain that a sword is a weapon and the art of swordplay is the art of destruction. No matter how nice you call it, it is an unchangeable truth. But Hwang Hong still insisted that Gio really didn't have a sword. Just in time, a monster was approaching the hunters. Gio decided to use the minimum amount of magic to destroy the monster without the villainous tofu noticing. Gio used the sword shape to destroy the monster. She joyfully told Hwang Hong to look at her sawing the monster in half, which meant she was a swordsman. The sword is an extension of their prejudice. Hwang Hong could only agree that Gio was indeed a swordswoman with more physical strength than he had, but he still didn't see the sword. Hwang Hong's first title was Lord of the World of Desire. He was a kind of a contracted summoner, connecting the world of evil spirits with the other world through the shadow. In other words, he was far from a swordsman. Huang Hong could not calm down. He couldn't understand why a swordsman of such a high level was unknown to anyone. Jiyo didn't understand what Huang Hong was talking about, so Huang Hong explained that Jiyo was his associate who was hiding the protagonist's strength. Huang Hong also noticed that recently he was the only one talking, and Jiyo didn't say or hear much. Jiyo was annoyed that Huang Hong was so observant. Huang Hong was curious to know if the aggressive cat had visited the fortress. If Jiyo had left after visiting the training center, the other hunters couldn't help but get information. Jiyo began to feel angry at Huang Hong's curiosity. She explained that she was a reclusive outsider, so her presence was hardly felt. Her abilities were not that good, so she didn't make it into the rankings. Huang Hong was 24 years old. His profession was a gangster boss. Thanks to his job, he knew how to get information, but he was surprised that such a capable person as Jiyo remained an unknown figure that no one had heard of. The aggressive cat was like a ghost. Jiyo looked at him and thought to herself that of course no one had heard because she had just made it up. Jiyo started to get bored with Huang Hyun's game of detective, so she asked him to stop playing and come over to her, but Huang Hyun wouldn't stop. He wanted to know why she was hiding herself. Because of Huang Hyun's curiosity, one of Jiyo's lies was piled on top of another, making Hitokiri's attitudes harder to understand. Hitokiri's attitude is that of a well-hidden loner, an outsider who hid well, and a person with poor abilities. Jiyo's ability to use ironclad logic stopped working. No matter how hard Jiyo tried to think of something, she couldn't come up with anything. She couldn't get caught so easily, so she suggested that we look for missing persons first. Still, Jiyo decided to tell the reason she was hiding. She wanted Huang Hyun to leave her alone. The reason why she was hiding as an aggressive cat was simply because she was ashamed. Constellation Destiny Reader was embarrassed to see this. He decided to support Jiyo, so he said that she looked cute even when she couldn't lie. To be sure of Jiyo's words, Huang Hyun decided to ask her if it was really as she said. Jiyo assured him that it was true, but she didn't understand why Huang Hyun had such a happy expression on his face. Huang Hong explained that because Jiyo was ashamed of a world where only fame was valued, the Hermit Master preferred to help people from the shadows, rather than seek fame. Jiyo stared at Huang Hyun in surprise. She couldn't figure out what she had said other than shame. Huang Hong was deeply impressed with Hitokiri Badasai. Jiyo noticed that Huang Hyun was very excited. Huang Hyun explained that this was not the way things would work. People must be held accountable for their actions. He didn't understand who could have known about the vain sacrifice. He explained that for the crow to find the body, it had to have flesh. For the first time in a long time, Huang Hong sounded serious. Jiyo believed that everything was right. Her opponent was a man who would not suffer losses. She considered Huang Hyun the king of the underground. Jiyo believed that people from the underground were wise to their experience and would never follow someone at the risk of their lives. Huang Hong assured Jiyo that this would not be the case. From now on, he decided to take responsibility for the aggressive cat and raise her, so he asked her to trust him. Jiyo was shocked by these words. She was amazed by this conversation. While the S-class representatives were busy fooling around upstairs in the classroom on the 6th floor, the monsters were holding civilians hostage. Yoon Iso finally regained consciousness. Seo Gaehyun was happy to see him, but he didn't seem to remember her. She explained that she was Yoon Kangjae's friend from high school. Yoon Iso was on the 4th floor. So Gachin explained that they were on the 6th floor, and explained that she was locked in here with the people she was taking classes with. She heard a thud, and then the insects tied up the people who had lost consciousness and dragged them to this room. The girl said that they were all together all the time, but about 30 minutes ago, the monsters dragged the men hunters and Kangjae away to an unknown place. Yoon Iso was the last one to wake up. Yoon Iso knew that the parasite monsters wanted strong donors, so they thought that Yoon Iso didn't fit their criteria. Seo Gaehyun asked if there was anything Yoon Iso could do. He was a high-level runner from Channel 1. Yoon Iso explained that it was a very strong action restriction. Seo Gaehyun wondered if an A-class runner couldn't defeat a monster of Tier G because of the action restriction. Yoon Iso explained to her that it was Tier B. It had been a long time since the tier had changed. No matter how much Yoon Iso thought, he could not understand why there was no connection with his animal partner. A partner is called animal tamer. Called animals are divided into 3 types. Partner, protector, bird. The main calling of the animal is to do everything together with the tamer. A tamer without a partner is like a swordsman without a sword. Yoon Iso said with regret that his partner should have been with him. The monsters began to return. One of them began to approach Eunjung. Gaehyun started screaming and calling out for her friend. Yoon Iso asked Gaehyun to calm down so she wouldn't attract attention. The cobwebs covered the entire room. Yoon Iso explained that right now there shouldn't be any problems because people had already been dragged to Eunjung. Yoon Iso's pet striped snake began to chew on the web that bound Yoon Iso's hands. Gaehyun was surprised to see that Yoon Iso's hands were free. Yoon Iso explained that he had called on his pet to free his hands. Yoon Iso hurriedly untied Gaehyun's hands. They had to get out before the monsters noticed they were free, but Gaehyun didn't want to leave without her friends. Yoon Iso explained that Gaehyun's condition was serious. Even the mushroom appeared, which meant that the germs had spread throughout her body. Hyun did not understand what to do next. Yoon Iso explained that he had an agent of the emergency response team with him, Tak Ramin, who had medicine, so they should go in search of him. But to be honest, Yoon Iso wanted to find other people. Yoon Iso wasn't sure he could call him. Even though they were both Channel 1 runners, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. Moreover, he was the head of the Morning Star Guild, which included the Invive Guild, which included Yoon Iso. Yoon Iso was scared, but he was still the person who was next to Hwang Hong. Yoon Iso interrupted his thoughts because he thought it was unimportant. Gaehyun was having a hard time walking, so Yoon Iso decided to walk slowly. The main thing was not to get caught by the monsters. The monsters had big bodies, so it was easy to spot them. Therefore, Yoon Iso and Goen had to move through the blind spots. Only in this way could they save the people in the cocoons. Yoon Iso suggested crawling to be less visible. Gaehyun noticed a giant monster behind Yoon Iso. The boy placed Gaehyun behind him to protect her. But it didn't come to a fight because at that very moment when the monster appeared, Jio and Hwan Hong came into the room. Jio immediately struck the monster, which destroyed it. Yoon Iso and Gaehyun looked at Jio and couldn't understand what had just happened, but the glorious Hwang Hong decided to explain everything himself. A long time ago, there was a Hitokiri who knew neither sword nor magic. Yoon Iso interrupted Hwang Hong's story, explaining that if he did not wield a sword, he could not be Hitokiri, but Hwang Hong continued his story. Hitokiri was desperate because of his lack of talent and spent every day in sadness. But one day, a friendly baldhead told Hitokiri that he would start training him, so from that day on, a touched Hitokiri began doing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 press-ups, and also 10 kilometers of running. Finally, after much training, he gained the power of an invisible blade. But while he was looking only forward in training, the world changed a lot. There were runners in the world who advertised beer and starred in dramas. There was also a runner who was obsessed with climbing a tower and so on. Hitokiri, who was ashamed of the life of strong hunters, made up his mind that it would become an invisible blade and protect people. Jio wasn't happy with the story Hwang Hong told her, so she asked him not to tell anyone else and to keep it a secret. After long conversations and rescuing people from cocoons on the 6th floor, the group went to rescue other people who were dragged by the monsters to the breeding room on the 7th floor. So Ramin tried to split the cocoon from the inside, but his attempts did not work. It was very difficult to breathe in the cocoon. Tak Ramin could not hold his breath any longer. Jio saved him by releasing him from the cocoon, just in time. Kenjio had to keep using her power with a small amount of mana so that no one could find out who she really was. To Jio, it looked like she was carving Versailles into the side of a bean. Jio froze in place, thinking she was hearing the wailing at the burial of the fencers. Hwang Hong couldn't understand what had happened to the aggressive cat. Instead of thanking him, Shin Jin Chul began to grumble and said in a dissatisfied voice that he could have saved them earlier. He was unhappy that he was covered in mucus and almost suffocated. Shin Jin Chul, as usual, began to speak rudely towards Yoon Yiso. He blamed him for everything. Yoon Iso's younger brother decided to stand up for him, but Yoon stopped him. Jio couldn't stand to look at the rascal Shin any longer. Jio began to say that Shin Jin Chul's behavior was disgusting. Shin Jin Chul got angry and started yelling at her. A fight ensued. Yoon Yiso looked at everything that was happening in amazement. A big man and a little girl. He should be able to deal with her quickly, but for some reason he couldn't. This strangeness was immediately noticed by everyone, so Ramin decided to stop the quarrel and reminded them that the cleanup was not over. There was 1 hour and 27 minutes left until closing time. The monsters were not destroyed, and the core was not destroyed either. The civilians were supposed to gather in one side and the cleansing team in the other. Judging by the structure of this dunja, the core was supposed to be on the roof. So Ramin wanted to say a few words to the aggressive cat. Jio didn't understand why she had to say anything if she was just a guide. He showed the screen of his phone. Tak Ramin was in the habit of checking information about the awakened, so he entered Ken Jio's name into the center's database and was shown that the information was classified. This was the first time Ramin came across such information, so he asked Ken Jio to tell him the truth about who she really was. Jio thought that curiosity got the better of the cat, but she had to say something. Tak Ramin had no bad intentions. Jio asked what needed to be done to pass the dungeons. The demon core heart and the base of the dungeons remained, as well as the demonic creatures next to it. Of course, Tak Ramin emphasized that Jio had done a great job, but that she had to finish the job. Jio felt that Tak Ramin was pressing on her fragile heart and humanity. Jio decided to help, so she created an additional character. It was only for a day, so she decided to give them gifts. So she activated the Soul Sword ability. One of the civilians started broadcasting live. Jio also appeared on it, but the quality was poor, so it was impossible to see her face. Ken Jirok also saw the live broadcast. Unlike the others, he recognized his older sister, Jio. With a heavy sigh, he started to get ready to leave the house to run errands. Jirok's younger sister, Ken Himgi, noticed that her brother was going somewhere, so she decided to ask where he was going. Jirok answered briefly without much explanation that he was going to Chono. At the same time, on the other side of Chono, the area of the opening dungeons of the Batir was infected. The hunters went to the roof of the building. Hunter Choi began to shoot videos of Jio destroying monsters. It was strange to watch a little girl with the nickname Aggressive Cat destroy a boss with a single punch. Shin Jin Chul asked Choi to turn off the camera. Gio decided to ask if this monster was really the boss. She was hoping that the cleanup was finally over. It was indeed the boss, but they still had to clear out what the boss was protecting. The remaining key that led to the dungeon core exit, and after the core is destroyed, you will still get a reward. If the core was destroyed, the dungeon would finally be cleared. As a reward, the team members were to receive items determined by a random roll of the system's dice. Objects were the main reason why many awakened ones sought dungeons. They raised the stats of those who wore them and also gave a special effect and so on. Some items could be sold for a high price. Shin Jin-chul rolled the dice and got the number 75. With such a high result, Shin Jin-chul hoped to get the object, but the aggressive cat rolled the number 99. As a reward, Gio received the monocle of a missing ancient sage. Shin Jin-chul still hoped that he could get the item as well, so he rolled the dice a second time and got the number 97. But the aggressive cat got 99 for the second time. Contract star Gio. The fortune teller didn't know what exactly she would like, so he prepared everything. He believed that Gio had suffered a lot, so it was worth selling the item and having a good meal. Every time Gio rolled the dice, she got the number 99. Joe thought about the casino. If she were in it now, the gangsters would have kicked her out long ago. The dungeons were over. Gio was about to go home when Yoon Yiso stopped her. Gio thought the boy wanted something from her, so she gave him her phone number and told him that if Yoon Yiso needed anything, he could just call her. Yoon Yiso said that he would definitely call, and then added that he could smell the dragon on Gio. Gio asked him to keep his voice down, and then added that Yoon Yiso smelled like a dragon as well. After that, she simply said goodbye to Yoon Yiso. Contract star Gio wondered why she was suddenly interested in other people's affairs. It was a unique case for him, but Gio didn't know the reason herself. She just felt an amazing closeness to Yoon Yiso. The fortune reader explained to Gio that the king could not save everyone. The king just watches over everything and the throne. The king acts for the sake of the people, not for one person. He tends to save and protect rather than help others. Gio explained to the star that everything happened in life. Her conversation with the star was interrupted by Hwang Hong. He wondered what the aggressive cat was talking about with Yoon Yiso. Gio said that she just gave her number to Yoon Yiso. Hwang Hyun's eyes showed great surprise. He thought he was imagining things, so he asked if the aggressive cat had really given her personal phone number to Yoon Yiso. Gio replied sarcastically that of course his was not Shin Jin-chul's. Hwang Hyun asked for her phone number, but Gio didn't want to give it to him. Hwang Hyun didn't understand why she didn't want to give her number. Did she not like him? This question shocked Gio into a shock. Hwang Hyun blushed. He couldn't understand why Gio was suddenly talking about a relationship. He explained that he liked Gio as a friend. Hwang Hong had zero experience in relationships. He had been single since birth. Hwang Hyun explained that it was just a fling. Gio asked him to just move away from her. So Ramin said that everyone did a good job, but it was time to close the dungeon. If the core of the dungeon is destroyed in the depths of the dungeon, the cleanup will be complete. Finally, it was over. Gio just wanted to go home and rest. But as soon as the dungeons closed, reporters came running. The reporters already knew about the super newcomer Hidakiri and wanted to talk to him. Gio was well aware that people who wanted to draw attention to themselves were everywhere. That is, among the people gathered in the front rows were those who destroyed the monsters and at least one person who secretly launched the live broadcast. Of course, Gio didn't like being photographed, so she opened the library and used the ability to edit. Thanks to this ability, Gio could even change the future as it was in Solon Station. With this power, Gio wanted to blur her presence in people's memories. But Gio was preemptive and decided to activate her magical powers. Before she could activate her magic powers, Gio showed up on his bike. He asked the reporters to put away their cameras because if they didn't, he would smash them. Every reporter knew how sensitive Bambi was to his privacy, so they turned off the cameras. He didn't understand why Gio was standing still, so he asked her to get on the bike. Jirok couldn't understand why Gio had so many things. Gio explained that it was a reward for the dungeon's fortune favored her. She was grateful to her brother for saving her from the reporters. Hwang Hong knew that the aggressive cat had been taken by Ken Jirok himself. If he touches on Jirok's personal life, he can find out more about the aggressive cat. We also came for Hwang Hong. Unasem was the second in the Morning Star. He asked Hwang Hyun to get in the car as soon as possible because he was afraid that Hwang Hyun's identity would be exposed. Hwang Hong told Unasem that there were things they needed to know. First, he wanted to know what Yoon Yiso was doing, and about the girl who left with Kang Jirok. She looked like a cat, small and smart. Ken Jirok has been driving a motorcycle since high school right after he got his hunter's license. In the past, you could get a license when you were 16, but hunters could get it earlier to be able to get to the rift quickly. Instead of thanking him, Gio started to say how uncomfortable she was. Jirok said that it was offensive that he had given her a ride and asked her to apologize to Christina. Finally, Gio realized that the Christina that Jirok kept talking about was a motorcycle. Every day, Jirok said I would go for a ride with Christina and I bought a gift for Christina. Gio thought that Christina was his girlfriend. While talking with her brother, Gio did not even realize that they were at their house. Gio realized that even though she was hiding her identity, the house was very modest for two S-class students living in this house. But compared to the old outdated house, this house is almost like heaven and earth. At least my mom's family had a house like this, but my dad didn't have one at all. It was very hard for Gio's parents to raise 3 children in poverty. After Zio's awakening, the family's situation improved when the Silver Lion government supported them. But everything lost its meaning when Ken Jirok awoke and became a hunter. Jirok asked Zio to hide all the items so that his mother wouldn't see them. Zio decided to give all the items to her brother. Jirok was surprised by his sister's actions. He did not understand why Zio decided to give everything away. Zio explained that the star told her it would be good for her health. Jirok didn't want to take the items because he thought everything was garbage. He didn't even need to look inside. Zio said she did it out of love for her brother. Jirok couldn't even cook Chio properly. Ken Jirok was born with the name Bambi, the younger brother. Although he behaved a bit roughly, he was gentle by nature. It was as if her mother was avoiding using the money Jirok earned as a hunter fighting on the front lines. She spent sleepless nights every time Bambi went to the tower. Jirok asked if Zio had called her mom before going to the Dansi. Of course she had called her mom and told her that she would be late because she had been asked to be a witness. Although sometimes Jirok and Zio were at odds with each other, they always took care of their family. That's why the three children still lived pretending to be ordinary daughters and son, so that nothing in the house would remind them of the hunters. At the door, they were met by Himgi's younger sister, who now understood why Jirok had suddenly gone to Chono to pick up Zio. Himgi asked them to come inside as soon as possible as they had guests. Zio noticed that there was one pair of men's shoes at the entrance. Only one man in their neighborhood could wear such shoes. Looking into the kitchen, Zio and Jirok noticed Bom talking sweetly to their mother. He was always very interested in their mom's health and always brought her medicine. Zio's mom thought that they were making Bom uncomfortable. Bom asked him to stop talking like that because he was offended by such thoughts. Mom noticed Zio and Jirok and asked them to come over and say hello to the vice chairman. Zio greeted Bom and asked him how he was doing. She didn't understand what he was doing in their house. She wanted Bom to leave. Bom said hello back and told him that he was doing well. He also noticed that Zio had become more serious since they hadn't seen each other. Zio's mother did not understand where her daughter was serious. Mom was waiting for the day when Zio would grow up, because she was just always idle. To avoid hearing this conversation, Jirok quickly went to his room. Zio noticed how her mother and Bom communicated quite well without any sense of awkwardness. When Zio was little, the state made Bom responsible for her. This was the beginning of everything. At first, Bom simply accepted the center's request, but over time he became sincere. This natural progression of things led to the establishment of the Twinning Support Program. An entire board of pieces must move to obscure one night. For everyone, it was called the Care System, which helped to establish close relationships between the children of the victims of the Nightmarish March and the members of the Silver Lion Guild, with the cooperation of the Awakened Office and the Silver Lion Guild. Of course, Zio and Jirok's mother was very grateful to the Silver Lion Guild for their care, but she was worried that her children might cause inconvenience to the Awakened. Bom explained that Silver Lion felt deeply responsible for the Nightmarish March, so he asked them to consider their support as part of the payback. She stood up from her chair and ran to her younger daughter and apologized to Bom, explaining that her daughter was sick. Taking care of 3 children took a lot of her energy, and she didn't even have a husband anymore. That's how the brother and sister of the Kang family grew up in the big arms of the Silver Lion. They spent most of their childhood with Bom in Seokwan's large estate. For Ms. Park, who was responsible for providing for her family, this was a lifeline. It is understandable why she welcomed Bom as a benefactor. Bom decided that it was time for him to leave, but Gio's mom objected. It had been so long since they had seen each other that they should at least have a meal together. But Bom refused. He asked Gio to walk him out. Gio wondered what Bom was talking about with Ms. Park. Bom explained that it was the same thing as always. He explained that the lion was in charge of his pride until the last day Gio was a member of his pride. Bom explained that Gio could not even howl how hard it was to shut up all the witnesses of the Dansha because of Hitokiri. Gio said she didn't care what they did, as long as her mother didn't know. People aren't stupid enough to pick on the king's weaknesses, Bom explained. Gio wondered why Bom needed a Class B license. Bom reminded Gio that there was one person in the Dansha from whom the government could not easily protect the secret. There would be no harm in playing it safe. For Bom, it was strange that Gio was fitting in with others. It was not like her at all. It was what puppies did. And Gio looked like a cat, so she should act like one. As a farewell, Gio gave Bom an umbrella. She had a feeling it was going to rain. Just as Gio entered the house, it started to rain outside. Bom smiled sweetly at the fact that Gio was right about the rain, but he should have brought a bigger umbrella. The next day, Gio invited Seo Gai-hyun and Yoon Kang-jae to a cafe. Gio thought that she had worked hard for one day, so she deserved a month of doing nothing at all. Seo Gai-hyun was outraged that Gio had only invited them to a show for her mother so she could laze around. Yoon Kang-jae thought that for the first time, he could let Gio get away with it. She's had a lot on her plate lately. In all of her 20 years, Gio had only 3 friends, Sol Sarah, Jang Sado, and Jang Sena. Unfortunate souls who were only connected to Gio because they went to the same kindergarten. The Cheongno Art University was closing after the opening of the Dansha, so Yoon Kang-jae was curious to know if Gio would change courses. Gahan couldn't calm down, so she kept talking in a high-pitched voice. Gahan was outraged that the university was being closed. Of course it had to be closed because Yoon Kang-jae dared to fight the monsters, Gae-hyun insisted. Yoon Kang-jae was sure that their country was incredible, and whenever there was a crisis, a hero would appear. Gio asked when Sarah was supposed to come. Gaehyun thought that Jio was only waiting for Sarah because she only wanted to hear something nice about her. When Sarah entered the cafe, she immediately told Ken Jio that her younger sister was having an affair. Jio thought of Jirok and Christina, so she asked Sarah to calm down, saying she had already explained everything for her brother. But Sarah wasn't talking about Jirok, she was talking about Gimhee. This news shocked Jio. Sarah continued to talk. She said that Gimhee seemed to be in a relationship with a foreign boy. Sarah saw them walking from the bus to the cafe. Kenjio decided to leave the cafe. She was in her late 20s and had sisterly complexes. Gimhee's younger sister could be called Jio's treasure, an incredibly sick and constantly worrying treasure. When Jio was little, she was always wondering why her parents named her brother Jio and her sister Gimhee. Her mother explained that this choice of name was because Gimhee had a weak body. Her mother also explained to little Jio that other people said that if you gave a person an ancient name, that person would live a long and happy life. On January 1st, in the first month of the year, Jio was born. The same year, on December 31st, Jirok was born. Ken Chio was by nature a person with narrow boundaries. The place of the younger belonged to Jirok. 3 years later, Gimhee was born. She was a premature baby and was constantly hospitalized. Gimki constantly needed her mother's eyes and hands. Gimha was in pain again, so her mom decided to go to the hospital with her. Jio had to wait for her dad and be good. Because of her sister's constant illnesses, it was mostly their father who took care of Jio and Jirok. After her awakening, Jio grew up almost entirely under the Silver Lion's responsibility. She was not jealous or capricious because her sister took her mother away from her. Jio was not sensitive enough for that, and she did not feel a lack of attention from others. But if someone had asked if Jio was attached to Gimhee, she would have had a hard time answering. For Jio, Gimhee was like someone else's little sister. That's all she felt for her. If it wasn't for the day when Ken Jio was 13 years old. Jio received a call from her mother asking her to come home because Gimhee was sick. On the way home, Jio met some friends who were going to play the arcade. They invited Jio to go, but she refused because she had to go home. Gimhee said she was going to sleep so Jio could go with her friends. Kenjio is 13 years old and Ken Gimhee is 10 years old. It was the age when all the interest was focused on friends. Gimhee was always sick and nothing much ever happened, so Jio decided to go with her friends. That day, Jio found out too late that everything had gone wrong. Gimhee had an acute pneumonia that nearly killed her. Jio felt guilty because she could have just waved her hand and made Gimhee's disease go away, but Jio didn't. She didn't understand why Gimhee had said she was fine and that she didn't have to come home. Gimhee apologized to Jio for being scolded. Jio didn't understand why Gimhee didn't call her Ani. Gimhee said it was because she was not her younger sister. Jio and Jirok spent a lot of time together, and Gimhee was alone almost all the time. Therefore, the words of her younger sister had a strong smell of loneliness. This weight fell on her shoulders. It was on that day that Ken Jio became Ken Gimhee's older sister. Ken Jio was excited, but when she saw her sister lying on the couch, looking like a lioness in the savannah, her enthusiasm faded. Gimhee could not understand why her sister was pretending to be a cat again. Jio asked Gimhee who she had been corresponding with, but Gimhee was in no hurry to answer. She didn't understand why it mattered to her who and what her sister was doing. Jio asked Gimhee if she and her older sister would go shopping for the first time in a long time. The first thing Gimhee asked was how much money they could spend. Jio assured her that it would be a lot, but Gimhee asked to see proof. Jio took out someone else's credit card and showed it to her sister. After seeing the card, the girls went shopping. The Hunters Market was a place where equipment for hunters was sold. It could be considered a small market because only items were sold here. But of the 3 huge markets in Country D, the Jeongdam Market contains many brands. So the Hunters Market was no worse than a luxury shopping center. Only 3 floors were open to ordinary customers. The 4th floor and above were accessible only if accompanied by a hunter's license holder. Gimhee asked Jio what she thought of the perfume. She was surprised when her sister liked the scent, so she decided to take one of the perfumes. The perfume cost 367,000 won. This amount shocked Jio. For this amount, you could buy 12 chickens. But all Joe had to do was take out his card and pay for the purchase. Jio saw how much Gimma liked the perfume, so she decided it was nothing, and decided to pay for the perfume within 12 months. But the seller said that this card could not be used for installments. Jio was shocked to hear this. It was a VIP card. Jio decided to pay for the full amount of the perfume. Previously, Jio had only used her VIP card to buy chicken. Gimhee bought herself cosmetics and perfume as if she had bought everything she needed. But Jio hadn't bought anything at all. Gimhee felt like she was stealing from her sister. Jio said that she would not take anything for herself. For the older sister, seeing her little sister happy was enough to make her happy. Perhaps this was what it meant to be an adult. It was easy enough to see that Gimhee was in a good mood. So, Jio thought it was the perfect moment to bring up the topic of boys. Jo immediately assured her sister that she could talk about anything with her older sister. Gimhee asked Jio to stop. She wasn't stupid, so she could do it without help from Jio or Jirok. Gimhee was also a hunter, so she could do it without help. As soon as the elevator doors opened, a security guard stood next to them and wanted to check the hunter's license. Gimhee was outraged by this, as he had recently been checked. The 7th floor was for VIP clients, so they had restrictions on the hunter class. Gimhee was E-class. She had access only to the 6th floor inclusive. Gima was offended that hunters were constantly divided into classes, so she just decided to leave. Gio was afraid to say something wrong because she might not be understood. But it didn't matter, so Gio stopped her sister by taking her hand and showed the guard her Class B license. The security guard apologized and gave Gio access to 10 floors. Gimi looked at her sister in surprise. She knew that the license was not hers. Gio explained that Bomb had given the license to Hitokiri. Of course, the S-Class had a different license, even in appearance. Just look at Ken Jirok to see that the earring was his license. Gimha was sad. She began to doubt herself again and wondered if she could do anything on her own. Gio assured her sister that she would do anything for her, even without Hitokiri. But Gumhee didn't understand why Gio would do anything for her. The only reason Gio answered was because Gumhee was the only younger girl in the world. Gimhee didn't like herself, but Gio decided to cheer her up. So she told her sister that she liked Gimhee very much. She wanted to buy the best things for her little sister. Gio imagined that it was the right time to give a diamond ring. Gimhee noticed that Gio was imagining things again. The salesman apologized for the inconvenience to Mr. Marlin. It was at that moment that Marlin noticed two young girls. Was this floor not only for high-end hunters? The salesman explained that it was possible to go through someone else's floor license. Marlin was angry that some ordinary girls, not even hunters, were touching the precious objects. Gimhee also got angry and said that they were hunters and called Marlin an old man. Gio was surprised that her sister spoke perfect English. Marlin asked what grade the girls were in, but Gimhee said that they did not have to report to him. But Marlin replied that a true hunter would follow the rules of the floor and not show off with words. He was an AA class hunter from the Aegis Guild, Lucas Marlin. Lucas Marlin pointed his finger in Gio's direction. He needed an object that was behind Gio's back, so he asked her to move away. But Gio refused, and also called Lucas an old man. The seller asked Gio to move away if she was not going to buy the item. Gio decided to ask how much the item cost. The seller did not expect this turn of events. Gio was approached by her personal assistant, Im Sanin, who informed her that the item was not yet registered, so it was going to be auctioned off. Gio said she was willing to buy the item at any price. From that moment on, the price of the pendant doubled. Gio said that whatever price the old man said, she would pay twice as much. Gio held out her black VIP card. The salesman was shocked to see it. He knew it was an imperial black card. There were only 11 such cards in the world. Imsanin did not know who this girl was, but she was a world leader. The contract star was also shocked by Gio's actions. Either she spends millions or she's not ready to spend a cent at all. The fortune teller started to joke around with Gio, but she didn't like it, so Gio warned the star that if he continued to joke, she would simply terminate his contract. Gio decided to find out more about the pendant. It was a pendant of an ancient god with no name. If you wear it, the pendant will protect you from enemies. The potential abilities were sealed. There was another description of the pendant, the 3 Commandments of St. John. The pendant became property as soon as it was worn. It was impossible to make transactions and impossible to keep the pendant in inventory. A pendant of an ancient god from the era of myths. St. Eves carved the 3 Commandments and then possibly put them in 3 fragments. The ancient god Eve was born the first of the 3 gods, the 3 commandments on which he swore to protect his brothers in the last war. The first commandment is that you should consider yourself me, and I will consider myself you. The second commandment is to protect each other from crisis and suffering. The third commandment is not to turn away from each other under any circumstances, even in the face of death. According to these 3 commandments, the brothers met an honorable death on the same day and at the same time. The first person to wear the pendant will be able to appoint a second and third user. When activating the item in accordance with the 3 commandments, it is possible to check the status among the wearers and share the location. In case of destruction, the instant invocation of the first carrier can be restored twice. The blessing of the Holy Spirit and honor. Increased vitality and firmness of willpower. Lucas Marlin immediately realized that the black card was Bomb from Silver Lion, so he decided to ask Gio directly what her relationship with Bomb was. The Aegis Guild was not happy that Lucas Marlin returned empty-handed. Did Lucas miss the target just after arriving in Korea? Lucas was assured that Timmy would be very happy to hear about it. He was very upset that he didn't come to Korea first. But Timothy didn't want to suffer from the press, and he was abroad. Lucas suspected that Marimaldi was meeting with someone. This would explain why he was traveling separately from Timothy. Lucas also decided to ask if the girl was Korean. Marimaldi admitted that he did meet with the girl, but it would be wrong to call it a romantic relationship because she was not even 20 years old. Lucas attacked Marimaldi. Afterwards, Marimaldi said he was just joking. They were just helping each other with the language. She helped him with Korean, and he helped her with English. But Lucas decided to ask again if it was really true. Marimaldi assured him that it was. Lucas breathed a sigh of relief because he didn't want his relationship with Bomb to deteriorate. Lucas thought that there was no new information about Bomb, but the appearance of Gio changed everything. Gio also kept thinking about Lucas in their conversation. Of course, Lucas was quick to tell Gio that her sister spoke English quite well. It was as if she was talking to a native speaker. Gio decided to ask Gimhee directly if she had a foreign boyfriend. It was a surprising question for Gimhee to hear from her sister. Gio explained that Sarah had seen Gimhee walking with a foreign boyfriend. Gimhee spoke English quite well. Gimhee explained that he was not her boyfriend at all. Gio was happy to hear this. But her joy was short-lived because Gimhee explained that no one could know what might happen between a boy and a girl. Jio was against Gimhee having a boyfriend, so she forbade her sister to see him. But Gimhee explained that Jio had no right to forbid her. Gimhee had never been in a relationship because of Jio forbidding her to date boys. The fortune teller believed that Jio had really gone overboard and advised her to find a boyfriend and finally get out of her single status. But Jio was really uneasy at heart this time. Jio couldn't understand why the head of the Agid's information strategy department had approached her and had a quick showdown. What it all meant, Jio couldn't understand either. Perhaps a contract star could have helped Jio, but the star said that he could not help in order not to upset the balance of the world. Jio would have to figure it out on her own. It was hard for Jio. She realized that if she got in front of her again, she could ruin her relationship with Gimhee. What could she do for her as an older sister? A new server update took place. New runners were constantly breaking into the top. Another awakened S-class appeared in the Republic of South Korea. The local server took its first step to the top in 10th place. It was all really strange. A new ranker broke into the top immediately after his debut at the very top. It was as if it was the first time since the King of Magicians. Although neither Bambi nor the King of Nightly Meals hit the top quite high for the first time. Choi David Bambi and Huang Hong made their first appearance in the top 10 rankings. Because it was after the first and second generation of awakened ones took their place in the top rankings, so it was really the first time after Joe's awakening. It seems that Beck's butler turned out to be a more powerful person than Jio thought. Jio's contract star began to blow on her so that the millennial love would cool down quickly. The girls hurried home to order food. They met Jirok in front of the house. Jirok hoped that the sisters had a good time together. Jumhee was quick to tell him about their trip to the hunter's market. Jio reported that Jirok was shocked. For the first time in her life, Jio wanted to give something to her brother and sister. She asked Jumhee to tilt his head. Jumhee really liked the pendant that Jio gave her. Jio asked Jirok to come over because he also had a pendant for her. But Jirok said he would wear the pendant himself. After all three of them put on the pendants, Jio recited all three commandments. From then on, they were bound to each other forever. Jio said that if one of them was in trouble, she would come to the rescue by breaking the pendant. Jio wanted to do everything for her brother and sister. It was only now that Gimhee realized that Jio was worried about what she had said. Jirok seems to be thinking only about the tower, because if Jio is really willing to do anything for them, then it's worth going to clear the Tower of Babylon. But Jio pretended not to hear anything. To understand the incident, we need to go back to the night when Jio said the three commandments. Late in the afternoon, Jio snuck into the kitchen to eat. She overheard her mother and the vice chairman talking. My mom complained about Jio. She didn't understand how long Jio would be lazy. Not only were her younger children awake, but Jirok was also the boss. Mom's heart ached because Jio had no interest in anything. Mom didn't understand what exactly Ms. Park wanted. Did she want him to watch Jio a little longer? Jio panicked and went back to her room. Something had to be done, but she didn't know what. Jio decided to get a part-time job just so her mother could finally calm down. She wanted a sedentary job, so she started looking for one. The Babylon Guild was looking for a secretary. The next day, Jio came for an interview, but first they had to check her hunting license. It seems that the Babylon Guild was very popular because quite a few people came to work there. Jio had a Class B license, so she had to work in some higher position than a waiter. The Babylon Guild was quite noisy today. Someone also put on the scanner sound, which was constantly interfering. Finally, the results of the interview were announced. Jio failed the interview. While Jio was at the interview, an uninvited guest showed up at Jirok's office at the same time. The guest was unhappy that he had to wait for Jirok for a long time. Jirok believed that his guest had a lot of free time if he came without warning. The guest stood by the wine cabinet. Jirok was not yet 20 years old and already fond of alcohol. Jirok asked to put down the bottle of wine because it was for the guests. But he was also a guest. Jirok wondered why Jung Kilgon had come to see him. Jung Kilgon had come to talk about Baek Dohan. He wanted Baek to be in his guild. So Jung Kilgon wanted Ken Jirok to give up the new hunter. They didn't even have the contract stamped yet. But Jirok explained that Baek Dohan himself wanted to talk to him personally. Perhaps everyone knew that in today's world, where all kinds of intrigues are rampant, Ken Jirok was able to grow up so quickly only because of Sasajong. Jeong Kilgaon insisted on his point. He believed that Jirok had stabbed his friend in the back. These words made Jirok angry, so he decided to remind Jeong Kilgaon whose territory he was on. Jeong Kilgaon behaved so brazenly only because he was offended by the behavior of a friend with whom he had studied for decades. Jong-il also wondered why Jirok was supposed to meet with Baek Do-hyun the day after tomorrow. Jirok explained that Baek Do-hai also had a meeting tomorrow. Jong Kilgaon noticed that the office was very noisy today. Jirok explained that the hunters were being interviewed. Their conversation was interrupted. Jirok was asked to go downstairs immediately. When Jirok came downstairs, he saw his sister Jio and asked her to follow him. Thus, Ken Jirok completed Ken Jio's first interview. Jirok's subordinates were surprised that this girl was really their director's older sister. They didn't look like each other at all. It was as if they were from different categories. Jirok couldn't understand what Jio was thinking. Jio decided to explain that her brother was always telling her about work, especially in front of Gimha. But Jirok still didn't understand why she had come to his guild to apply for a job. Had Jio decided to reveal her identity? But but that was not the case. Gio explained that she would work either here or in Gangwon-do, but Gio didn't want to work in Gangwon-do. Ji-rock wondered what Gio would tell her mom, because even their mother knew that ordinary civilians were not hired in Babylon. So, mom finds out that Gio is also a hunter. Gio got an advertisement for civilians to work in Babylon. Ji-rock was shocked that his sister used magic to make this ad. Gio told her brother that Mrs. Park already knew everything. Thanks to the part-time job, Gio will be able to pay for her courses and become a good daughter. So her mother cooked Gio ribs and sent her to the interview. It seems that Gio has succeeded in making Ji-rock angry again. Gio wondered if she was suitable for the position of secretary. Ma Yu-rim of the Babylon Secretariat is the second name of the head of Ma. He was looking for Ken Gio again. Gio was in the meeting room with drinks at the moment. Ma Yu-rim didn't understand why only now if the guests were already waiting. Her subordinates started joking that Gio was slow, but this joke made Ma Yu-rim angry because work is no place for jokes. They were supposed to help Gio learn everything, not make fun of her. The co-workers started gossiping about how Gio got to work. Gio and Ji-rock were born the same year, so they were almost like twins. Ji-rock always protected his sister. Everyone thought that Gio was an ordinary person until they noticed her resume. Choi Seong-hae was interviewed together with Gio. All the employees were curious to know what it was like to be interviewed by the boss's sister. Seong-hae explained that even if Gio wasn't the boss's sister, she would have passed because she was very smart. As soon as Gio entered the room, Ma Yu-rim immediately attacked her. He did not like the way the girl worked. He explained that even delivering tea and cookies was a serious and responsible job. Other employees did not understand why Ken Gio stayed in the meeting room. Did she really know the guest? Gio froze in place and did not know what to say. When Gio entered the room, Ji-rock asked her to say hello to the new employee of the Babylon Guild, Mr. Baek Do-hyun. Baek Do-hyun sat there in shock and did not know what to say to Kang Jo. It was hard to believe that Baek Do-hyun's paths had crossed with Ken Gio again, a star sword that protects order and justice from all evil. Had he really taken a sacred oath, and was he going to betray his star? The universe did not create this thing for him. He didn't refuse. On the contrary, he even agreed. It was absurd. He hadn't lost yet, so he should go back and complete the mission. What defeat meant to him? What kind of mission it was? Everything that he had to accuse and defend had already disappeared. He had nothing left, so he simply asked for a trial. But they refused to hold the trial. He had to complete his mission and fulfill what he had to do. All he had left was regret and hatred. Otherwise, he would not have bothered to come to this place after all he had seen. Everything was gone. He had nothing left. Baek Do-hyun's first encounter with Ken Ji-rock took place during the opening of a gate in the AG district. Baek was unable to repel the attack and fell to the ground, and Ken Ji-rock saved his life. Ken Ji-rock turned to Baek and asked him what grade he was in. Baek was in the B grade. Ji-rock could not understand what the boy's problem was and why he did not use the sword if Baek knew how to use it. Was Baek flying in the clouds? There was no order in Baek's battle. Ji-rock explained to Baek that people like him were the first to die in the tower, bastards who relied only on their rank during the fight. A representative of the Invive Guild appeared before Baek Do-hyun. Ji-rock considered them to be dirty gangsters who were useless. He approached Baek and asked if the boy was a newcomer. Baek was not a beginner. He was taking a repeat tutorial. Baek was asked again what grade he was in. This time, Baek answered that he was in F grade. Ji-rock was surprised by what he heard. Baek thanked Ji-rock for saving him and was about to leave. But Ji-rock stopped him and asked Baek to say goodbye to the Invive people because it was unlikely that Baek would ever see them again. The Tai sword should also be replaced because Baek's sword was no longer suitable for the fight. Baek looked at Ji-rock with a puzzled look and didn't understand what he was getting at. From today, Baek Do-hyun belonged to the Babylon Guild, said Ji-rock. No need to thank him, Ji-rock emphasized. At that time, the Babylon Guild was more than just a guild for Baek. For Baek, who had nothing, the members of the Babylon Guild became family, not just colleagues, although they did not accept Baek right away. The man who put out the protests of the guild members brought Baek to Babylon and helped the boy who lived with a sense of his own worthlessness and inferiority was Ken Ji-rock. Ji-rock explained to Baek that if he was going to live under the best but also dangerous title of front row seats to Babylon, he should stop flying in the clouds. Before the regression, Ji-rock was Baek's only foster brother. Ji-rock liked Baek's persistence. Ji-rock considered it a talent. He believed that an S-class that reached 10th place in the rankings was meant to be. Ji-rock asked if Baek believed in reincarnation. Baek just looked at Ji-rock in surprise. Immediately, Ji-rock explained that the man could not take his eyes off his lover, who had broken up with him a century ago, and this was their first meeting. Baek explained that he was just surprised to see a person he respected so close. Ji-rock didn't like being treated like a celebrity, but he liked to hear that he was respected as a hunter and looked up to. Ji-rock did not know how to flatter, so he immediately asked Baek Do-hyun to state his conditions. He didn't promise to fulfill them 100%, but he would try to fulfill 99% of them. Baek knew that Ji-rock had always recognized that he was not perfect because he was not God, but he did not give up on his goal and kept going until the very end. Ji-rock was determined and dedicated. Baek had no conditions. The only thing he asked of Ji-rock was to help him get into the industry, and he would sign the contract right away. But Beck wanted to tell him right away that he had seen the future, or rather fragments of the future. Ji-rock had just started to think he was normal. Beck knew it was hard to believe. Ji-rock didn't like snotty lies. Because a person ceases to distinguish reality from novels, as was currently the case with Beck, Ji-rock was sure that Beck didn't even know the universal law. It was hard for Ji-rock to believe that Beck was awarded the ability to see the future. Beck admitted that there was nothing worse than being fined by a worldwide law. After that, Beck told Ji-rock about his favorite doll that he used to play with as a child with his sisters. But Ji-rock lost it and told his mother that he gave it to a friend. The doll was actually in the attic under a box. Immediately after Beck's words, Ji-rock called Gimha and asked her to go to the attic. Gimhi was too lazy to go, but for the pizza, she agreed to do what her brother asked. Beck said that the doll was not on the edge, but a little further away. So Ji-rock asked his sister to put her hand between the cabinet and the drawer. A few seconds later, Gimhi told her brother that she had found Bambi the doll. Ji-rock was very surprised. In the near future, Beck said, his sister will be telling everyone about her find. Ji-rock wondered if Beck had seen the whole future, but Beck told him again that he only saw fragments that appeared spontaneously. Ji-rock did not understand why Beck was telling him this. But Beck explained that Ji-rock was in charge in Babylon, so he decided to inform them about this ability before he joined the guild. In the future, Beck could express his vision, which might contradict the guild members. So Beck wanted at least Ji-rock to know about his ability. Ji-rock thought Beck was very suspicious and had a bad feeling about him. But for some reason, he took a liking to Beck, and it was strange. From Beck's words, Ji-rock realized that they were close. This meant that he had accepted Beck from the future. Ji-rock gave the contract to Beck to finally sign it and imprint his mana well. Ji-rock trusted Beck only because Beck looked confident in his knowledge. Beck read in the contract that a friend's blood is hot and an enemy's blood is cold. Ji-rock was surprised that Beck even knew the transformation rune. Beck had not signed such documents for a long time and hoped to cooperate with Ji-rock. Beck said that he had changed his mind about the condition. He had one condition. He wanted to call Ji-rock by his first name. Ji-rock thought Beck was arrogant. Beck explained that he was 25 years old and Ji-rock was younger. Ji-rock had only one option, to agree to the condition that Beck signed the contract. At such an important moment, Gio came into the office and brought coffee. Ji-rock felt uncomfortable. He asked himself only one question. Why did Joe come in at that moment? Beck also asked himself the same question. What was Joe doing in this place? After a bit of a stir, Ji-rock noticed that the staff was strange, but Beck assured him that he was fine with it. After that, Beck asked when the next sweep was planned. Ji-rock said that the sweep was supposed to take place within a month. Beck assured Ji-rock that the tower needed to be cleared more often, but Ji-rock already knew that. Ji-rock was ashamed that it had become a metropolis and only 38 floors had been cleared. They worked slowly, but Beck objected. They weren't slow, they just didn't meet certain criteria. Beck's words shocked Ji-rock. Beck explained that Babylon had a title of Director. This title was given to a person for achieving a milestone when the clearing of the 50 floors was completed and the apparently priority space of the interior was opened. By becoming a director, this person will be able to interfere with the Babylonian system and have partial authority in dealing with Babylon. This is leadership. This meant that the king was the representative of the planet and the director of the spiritual world. Beck explained that this was exactly how it was. Therefore, it was important to get the title of director in a short time. But Ji-rock didn't understand why he had to do it for fame. Beck explained to Ji-rock that the manual could be used in other locations. Ji-rock wondered if it would be possible to intervene in another Babylon. Was that what had happened last week? But the 50th floor was not yet cleared in Korea. Beck explained that there was a Tower of the Homeless. It was the Tower of Babylon in the abandoned lands. This is the place where nameless people who were stateless went. This Tower of the Homeless was real, but the exact location of this tower was unknown. Beck told Jiroku that the 50th floor of the Kiddo Tower had already been cleared, and that the US had long since moved to the 40th floor. And in Korea, there was only one king, so their lag was not surprising. To put it bluntly, the assault and defense of the fortress was approaching, the military era of the masters of the spiritual world, i.e. the directors. Beck explained that even if Ji-rock wasn't going to fight, it was necessary to appoint a leader for the cleanup to reduce the damage and secure the tower. Because defense without a leader is just a fight of ordinary soldiers. Ji-rock asked me to inform the 5 guilds that the meeting to clear the 39th floor had been postponed to tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Those who don't show up will be treated as ordinary soldiers. Gio just sat in one place. She could not understand why she was not given any work at all. The new girl who came with Gio had a lot of work to do. Gio wondered what the new girl was doing so busy. Choi Seong-hai explained that the 39th floor was about to be cleared, so she was contacted by 5 guilds and was checking the items. Gio didn't understand why Choi Seong-hai was doing this important work alone, so she offered to help. Choi Seong-hai didn't understand it either. Choi Seong-hae was told that there were not enough workers. During the busiest period, they were dealing with several tasks at the same time, so even she got the job. An employee with a low position. Gio looked at her empty desk and felt sad. Choi Seong-hae explained that Gio had a higher position, so they probably had more responsible work for her. Mr. Ma approached Gio and said that Gio looked tired, so he asked her to go for coffee. For Gio, it sounded like this. "Ma'am, if you are bored, you can enjoy a refreshing latte at the coffee shop. Stop being so lazy and at least buy some coffee for Sanbei the drone." Geo thought the boss was a gorilla who was too rude. Geo was responsible for the task, so she went to get coffee for Boss Ma. But that's not what he meant. While Geo was waiting for her coffee to be made, she noticed Baek Do-hyun on the news. She didn't know if it was a coincidence or perhaps fate, but she kept coming across him. Geo became interested in Baek Do-hyun's personal story. The contract star noticed that Geo was always interested in those who caused problems. It could have been ignored, but it was connected to the pendant of Eva, so Geo was calm, because she left it in a safe place. Geo was sure that even a critical situation would be resolved if the King of Mages showed where the crayfish hibernated. Geo reached out to her contract star, but he did not respond. Geo tried to contact him, but it was all in vain, so Geo decided to come out and open up about the stigmas. But just as Geo was about to do so, someone broke down the guild's door. He apologized and said that he could not control his magic power, and asked if Geo was hurt. The star noticed that his dear Joe was wreaking havoc again. There was a temporary blockage in the local server of the Republic of Korea. The first director temporarily blocked interference in this area. The star considered the director to be impudent. Geo was worried that people might start gossiping about her. She did not know if it was okay for this man to say her name out loud. The man did not like the way Geo threw his jacket on the floor. First, the regressive Baek, and now this cunning thief. Geo couldn't understand why everyone knew her name. The man noticed that Geo's face was flushed. Of course, it was because her contract star had gotten in touch again. The girl in the coffee shop asked if Geo was okay. Geo said that she was fine and also said that the man would pay for the door and pointed at the stranger. Geo took her coffee and went to the guild. She didn't understand why the man was harassing her. He should have paid compensation. The man explained that in case Geo fainted, someone should be there, but Geo asked him to leave. The man explained that he was worried about Geo, but Geo wondered if they knew each other. The man said that he knew her and told her that she should ask how he knew her. Geo had 5 options for how this man knew her. First, he was a regressor. The second was a reincarnator. The third was he was in a book. The fourth was that he was omniscient. The fifth was that this man was a crazy stalker. There were indeed many options. The man called the 6th option fate. This stranger began to annoy Geo and she was drawn to him. It was really very strange. Geo felt some uncharacteristic feeling of sadness. Geo did not understand what was happening. It was as if a stranger was doing something to her. She asked what he was doing. She could have killed him for that. The man asked Geo what was wrong and if she missed him. Activation of the constellation's characteristic ability by the head of the library, Ken Geo. Geo asked the man his name. Guido Marmaldi, the man replied. Geo wanted to conduct documentation on Guido Marmaldi, but there was no documentation for this object. The job was a failure. The man knew that Geo was unable to carry out the documentation. He told her that she did not need this book. He would tell her everything himself. Guido Marmaldi said that he belonged to the Aegis Guild. He was officially ranked 9th in the world rankings. The American is from the south of Italy. In Babylon and around the world, he was called the Tamer. Geo was surprised. Guido Marmaldi said that everyone saw him as a lover and it all started with the sense of smell. He asked whose scent Geo was smelling, after which Guido said that they would meet again and disappeared into the crowd. She could not do anything. Mana reacted according to a certain law. When faced with a strong opponent, she would attack before Geo could realize the situation. But there was not the slightest danger from Guido Marmaldi. Geo felt tired. She believed that it was because the fortune teller was missing and not because of the Keto Fox. Star asked Geo to stop closing stigmas or she would get hurt. A girl approached Geo's desk and asked if Geo knew who she was. Do-Mi is Bambi's left hand, the first tanker of the Babylon Guild, 28th in the country's ranking. Geo replied that Do-Mi was a friend of their friend Gim Gim. Do-Mi was surprised that Geo was also an Instagram user and asked if she could be on a first-name basis with Joe. But Geo didn't use Instagram, so she allowed her to be on first-name term. Do-Mi approached Geo because of the key that Jirok had asked her to give him. It was a sapphire key that Jirok had asked her not to lose. The key was to a warehouse that only the core members of the guild and the royal family had access to. Each guild had to have its own warehouse. The inventory had a limited amount of space, so it was impossible to carry all the things in it. The bigger the guild, the bigger the warehouse. It was the key to the 9th underground safe, which was called the Sapphire Key to the Golden Warehouse of Babylon. Geo breathed out a sigh of relief. Finally, she had been given a task today as well. Behind her, Geo heard Baek Do-hyun's voice. He had come to get the key to access the underground safe. Finally, Baek could say hello to Geo properly. Geo went with Baek to the underground safe. Baek wondered if the place had always been so spacious, but Geo didn't say anything. After the tutorial, Baek and Geo met for the first time at the Babylon Guild. Baek grabbed Geo's hand and she asked him to let go. But instead of letting go, Baek asked her to stop avoiding him. Geo assured him that no one was avoiding him. Baek knew that Geo didn't like trouble, or more specifically, noisy situations, so he promised to be careful. So Beck asked Gio not to drift away from him and emphasized that he missed her, especially since she had told him her name. Gio told Beck that the sushi was not good, it was too sweet, and she almost got diabetes. Beck smiled and said that the recipe would have to be changed. Beck asked Gio if he could hold her hand at least until they got downstairs. It was very dark in the underground safe, and he was worried that she might fall. Gio asked Beck if he had come here before. In his past life, Beck had indeed been to the underground safe. Gio thought it was strange to get close to people you already knew. From the very beginning, Beck had been planning to join the Babylon Guild, so Gio wondered if Beck regretted this choice. Beck replied that he had no regrets. It was what he wanted, and he was ready for it. Gio thought that Beck was moving in the desired direction, but Beck himself was not sure. It was impossible to say for sure because at any moment, something could change for or against Beck's will. It seems that the regressor and the butterfly effect were related to each other. As soon as Beck picked up the sword, the seal of the Orthodox Sword of Kalka was removed. Therefore, Beck is obliged to move forward to the very end. While resting in the mountains, she heard someone calling her. A carrier pigeon brought her a letter from Babylon, but she did not care. The ruler was looking for her, so she should hurry. Choi David of the Hita Guild. As soon as David came down from the mountain, she went to the White Bird. Hayanse was surprised that David was able to deal with her feelings so quickly. Hayanse Guild. Hethi's nickname in Babylon is the White Bird. David seems to have broken off contact with them so that she doesn't have to adapt to others on trivial matters. David explained that a carrier pigeon had come from Bambi. The letter said that the meeting to clean up the tower had been postponed until tomorrow. The White Bird planned to go to the meeting if David agreed to go. Was Hayanse afraid that David would not go to the meeting just because she did not want to see anyone? The Hetha Guild decided to attend the meeting. Nay, Joan's house is a healer. She was asked to sign a contract. The family was promised that their home would be protected, and that they would also be protected because she was a valuable worker. Joan explained that he would not invest in a person with no prospects. But Joan's mother thought that the job was dangerous, and that her daughter was not a fighter. It was because Joan was not a fighter that she was offered this contract. Jeong Kilgaon's DI Guild nickname in Babylon Alpha. He explained that their guild was different from other guilds that were just starting to adapt to the circumstances. He was sure that their guild was the best. On the way out, June caught up with Jeong Kilgaon. She didn't understand why she was so appreciated. Was she really worthy of it? Jeong Kilgaon explained to her that adults made decisions based on facts, especially on the facts that he got from his own experience. He explained that Joan was so valued because, first of all, since ancient times in Korea, the highest class for a healer was AA. Secondly, none of them had reached this level until now. Thirdly, Najoan is the only AA class healer at this time. Jeong Kilgaon assured Najoan that she was a sacred princess who could be trusted. The world was full of healers, but there were none known in the lands of the Hunter metropolis. So, Jeong Kilgaon thought it was time for the hunter to show his true colors. He also told Joan that the 39th floor was about to be cleared, and that it would be the best opportunity to gain experience. He told Joan that tomorrow there was a meeting of the 5 guilds to discuss the purge. He asked if he could join the meeting in the hope that Joan would participate in the purge. The internet-loving Vivian Kim was waiting outside for Jeong Kilgaon. Jeong Kilgaon became the director of a large enterprise, so he didn't want to attend the meeting alone. Didn't Vivian want to know how it went? But Vivian Kim told Jeong Kilgaon that she was afraid of people, so he should find another secretary. And she asked him to say that he was not a director of a large enterprise, but a director of a branch of a large enterprise. Jeong Kilgaon emphasized to Vivian that she should look the other person in the eye when talking. But Vivian said that she couldn't do that because Jeong was so handsome. 10 years of working with Vivian and she still pretended not to know him. Jeong Kilgaon asked to make a window for Joan. The DI Guild decided to take part in the meeting. It was a peaceful night and a good night's sleep until Hwan Hyun's right-hand man knocked on Unasem's door. Unasem came to Hwan Hyun's room in the middle of the night because he saw a tearful post on the director's Instagram. Hwang Hyun promised Unasem that he would stop visiting Busan after the shocking news in Babylon, but Hwang Hong assured me that nothing had happened. After this answer, Unasem asked for an explanation of why Hwang Hong locked himself in the room immediately after Baek Do Hyun left his seal in Babylon. Unasem reported on the message about the meeting in Babylon. Hwan Hyun didn't understand why Jirok had changed the date, but he wasn't going to go anyway. Unasem tells Hwang Hong to go to the meeting and passes on a message to those who refuse to come. Jirok will leave those who don't come to the meeting as ordinary soldiers. That's exactly what he said. Hwang Hong said indignantly that Jirok had gone completely insane. Hwang Hong asked me to prepare a car for him. Unasem also wanted to tell him about the cat. Hwan Hyun became animated and asked if she was in a relationship with Bambi. Unasem said no. Unasem said that Ken Jirok and Ken Jio were siblings. 11 months apart in age, they grew up as twins. This news was too shocking for Hwang Hong. The Morning Star Guild refused to participate in the meeting. Young people were killed in battle. Old people died of old age. Everywhere you looked, there were memorial wreaths. Baum thought the beginning of the conversation was strange. Constant losses left in Seokwon no choice, so he had to be emotional. Baum reported that Babylon had begun to act. They must have sensed the crisis. Baum also told In Seokwon that his mother wanted to send Jio to Gangwon-do. Baum wondered what had happened. In Seokwon thought it was for the best. Jio had been living in a narrow frame of mind all this time. Baum explained that Jio was young and that things would change in time. In Seokwon noticed that Bom was more gentle with Geo than he was. After In Seokwon passes away, Bom will become the head of the Silver Lion Guild. In Seokwon asked Bom not to be cruel to his brothers. Bom assured In that he would not. Bom said that Jirok had changed the date of the meeting to tomorrow. In Seokwon didn't like Jirok's impatience, but the Silver Lion Guild decided to attend the meeting. Jirok told everyone present the information that Beck had told him. The ninth site could be more dangerous because of the directors. Everyone wanted to know the name of the informant, but Jirok could not tell them. It looks like the crowd of homeless people opened the entrance at the tutorial. Jeonkel Gaon noticed that the stateless people from the homeless tower seemed to have a decent level of citizenship. David thought they should stop wasting time talking and just start acting to keep up with the others. So it's time to get down to the sweeps. Ha Yangxi understood that they would be going to clear the 39th floor under Jirok's leadership, so she wondered how many people he planned to take. Jirok said no more than 20 hunters. Jirok couldn't understand why Ha Yansei was asking such obvious questions if she had suggested a joint sweep of the 9th precinct. Ha Yansei said that she came to this meeting to apologize. The Hate Guild did not have enough military strength for anyone to pass the selection. The main forces had left their guild because of the struggle between the internal group. David was shocked by Ha Yansei's decision and said that it was impossible to live in fear all the time. Ha Yansei said that perhaps she, as the leader of the group, should not disclose such details. Ha Yangxi said that other guilds were not competitors for her, they were comrades with whom she won and wanted to continue to do so. Therefore, she hoped for the understanding of others. David and the others could not understand what Ha Yangxi meant, so Ha Yansei decided to explain herself more clearly. There will be one person from the Heda Guild participating in the 39th floor sweep. That person is her. Jirok did not understand Ha Yansei's decision. The runners of the heavenly world could not enter the Tower of Babel, because no one knew what scenario awaited them right at the entrance to the closed floor. It could take from a few days to several months. Even if they dealt with half of it and tried to exit, the scenario could have an accidental security zone that would have forced them to leave the case halfway through. Babylon, which invested all its energy in mopping up, was an exception. The armies of other guilds rarely went further, especially national exemplary hunters like Ha Yanchi. Ha Yansei wanted to say that the Hita Guild would not participate in the purge at all, but Jirok's words made her change her mind. If they leave the parliament over such a trifle, it will be a disgrace to the Hettai morale that has defended the Korean peninsula for thousands of years. Ha Yansei said that, as always, Haeche will provide the best military force for the clan. Ha Yansei also asked her comrades to fill the empty space after her. In Seokwon asked her not to worry and assured her that the lions did not forget their duty and were very grateful for her help on the tombstone by singing the lions' bodies. In Seokwon's behavior and words were very unexpected for Ha Yansei. In Seokwon assured her that the Silver Lion had always been on Hai's side. Ken Geo and Baek Do-hen were in a warehouse storing specialty goods in Gyeonggi-do, but the warehouse worker couldn't find what they came for, so he asked them to go to the unclassified line. Geo didn't understand where to look for Tybaek, so she decided to check the unclassified lineage using the library. It seems that the item they needed was indeed lost, but Geo told the warehouse worker that she had found the item. Of course, she was able to do this thanks to the library. The box was to be delivered to Babylon. Geo noticed that Beck was not around, so she went to look for him. Butler Beck was standing in one place looking at something. He was surprised at how quickly Geo had found him. When she saw Beck hiding something in his back pocket, Geo decided to pretend she didn't notice. Beck went to get the car. At that moment, Geo received a call from an unknown number. In a good mood, she picked up the phone and spoke to Yu Ken Geo, the cutest Mach-Nai in the universe from Babylon's secretarial team. She heard someone begging her to help her brother. It was Yoon Kang-jae. The fortune teller said that the boy was in some poor neighborhood right out of the show. When Beck and Geo arrived in the neighborhood, Beck remembered the old place where he lived as a child. Geo almost died of shock. They needed a house on the mountain. Beck said that he didn't even know how much had happened to Yoon Yiso while he was in regression. Geo didn't understand how Yoon Kang-jae was able to call the number she gave his brother. It was also unclear where Yoon Iso had gone. Well, they would have to find out. Geo asked Beck Do-hen to stand back and cover his mouth and nose, but Beck didn't understand why he had to do that. Geo was conducting a drug sweep. When they entered the room, they found Yoon Yiso unconscious. Geo asked Beck to call an ambulance. Yoon Iso was taken to the hospital. It seems that he had overdosed on medication. Ken Geo was standing by his bedside. The last time she was in the hospital was when Gumhee was sick as a child. Geo did not like hospitals. Ordinary poisoning was treated with an antidote, but not in Yoon Yiso's case. Geo thought he should be seen by a top-class healer. Yoon Kang-jae blamed everything on Jo. Kenjo and Baek Do-hyun were shocked and surprised. Jo didn't understand why Yoon was blaming her for everything. She decided to ask Yoon Kang-jae what he meant. Of course, Yoon Kang-jae decided to explain why he blamed Jo for everything. He believed that if it weren't for Jo, if he didn't exist at all, his brother wouldn't be in this situation. Geo became angry and told Yoon Kang-jae that it was too much to blame the king when things became difficult in this world, and asked what Zo had done wrong. Beck was shocked at how naturally Jo took on the title of King of the Magicians. Yoon Kang-jae began to cry. He knew his brother was not who he said he was. Jo decided to calm Yoon down. He shouldn't have cried because he hated Joe, but Yoon Kong-jae did not calm down. He considered himself a fool for not wanting to believe it and hoped that eventually Yoon Yiso would reveal his identity and admit that he was Joe, who just decided to keep quiet about it. But Yoon Kong-jae kept turning a blind eye and not listening to his brother. Every day he would ask him if he was Joe. Everyone knew that the Black Dragon had one master, but Yoon Yiso kept telling his brother that he was not Joe. The very young Yoon Kong-jae believed that he had brought his brother to such a state. Yoon asked Jio for help. He was saddened that Yoon Yiso had been living like a slave for 6 years since high school, following the orders of scoundrels. Jio wondered why he asked her for help. Yoon Kong-jae said that Jio was a strong person and asked her to call her. Jio recalled the first time she met Yoon Yiso. It was hard for Jio to understand why Yoon Yiso had sent this schoolboy to her. He was nothing but trouble. The fortune reader mockingly said that Jio had been dealing with a lot lately. Jio decided to help them. She asked Yoon Kong-jae to choose one thing, rescue or revenge. Yoon Kong-jae initially decided to choose rescue, but after a few seconds he changed his mind and said he wanted revenge. The next day, early in the morning, Jirak was going to the cleanup. His mom was very worried about him. She asked him to remember to eat and to take care of himself. The worst days for her were when Jirak went to the tower for a sweep. On those days, his mother could not just live in peace. Jirak promised his mother that he would return very soon. Outside, Jio was waiting for him. At first, Jirak thought she wanted to go to the tower with him, but Jio came out because she also needed to go to a place. Jirak asked his sister to take care of the family while he was away. Jio asked for a ride to Pangae. Jirak wondered why she needed to go there. Jio explained that Beck, the butler, asked her to come over. A cafe in the Techno Valley of Pangae. As soon as Jio came to see Baek, she asked him a question about the fact that he was not actually a regressor. He went to Sinpudan to destroy the enemy's organization. In Jio's opinion, this was not cool at all. In novels, people from other dimensions usually fly in helicopters and visit America, but Beck spent 2,451 on the fare and did not break in, but simply sat motionless in a cafe. Beck explained that he was close to Pangi, so he decided it would be more effective. If he went in now, they would be exposed. Jio wasn't sure they were in the right place. The sign of this place said otherwise. The research center was written on the sign. Beck thought the same thing at first, but he was sure they were in the right place. The owner of the cafe remembered Yoon Iso well. Invive Guild, to which Yoon Iso belonged. Once upon a time, this guild was quite large and among the best in the country. But 10 years ago, during the Nightmarish March, which arose from a large-scale breakthrough and became the nightmare of all citizens, their guild went under, abandoning their hunting duties. At that time, Invive had a base in Yejeongbu. This territory was under their command, so they had to fight on the front lines defending the gate. When the second-degree explosion of the fault engulfed Yejeongbu, the Hethe Guild single-handedly saved all the residents. After this tragedy, the announced results of the judicial investigation made the picture even worse. Important faces of the guild reported that the gap appeared immediately when the gate was breached, which sent the people into a rage. A press conference with an apology was completely useless. It was considered a complete failure for the guild. However, the king of nightly meals from the Morning Star picked up this large organization and helped to raise the weakened Invive. Beck Doheny believed that this was a real stroke of luck for Invive. The young gangster who looked only at power naturally joined the process of uniting with the underground empire. Only 5 years have passed since their debut. Hwang Hong's Morning Star managed to enter the top 5 guilds. The problem was that only Hwang Hong's name was involved in the case. Beck suspected that the entire Morning Star was involved in this incident. If this was true, the case became more complicated. Baek Do-hyun asked Jo if she knew that Yoon Yiso had a contract with a fairy dragon. Of course she knew because his younger brother had shown her dragon scales. Beck had also seen another black dragon before his regression. Taking the stamp out of his pocket, Beck explained that it was the brand of a medicine he had found in Don Tan's warehouse. The raw material for this medicine was a fantastic fairy dragon, the second black dragon Beck had seen before. It's a good thing that the medicine was only at the manufacturing stage. It was a stimulant, but only in name. In reality, it was a drug. Manumission was known as the liberation of slaves. This stimulant was also called a medicine for liberation. The Liberation Squad was an international terrorist group belonging to Kiddo. Kiddo clearly influenced the creation of manumission. It is likely that the incidents that will take place in the future will also have his presence. Beck knew that Kiddo was a member of the Liberation Squad, but Beck did not expect that manumission was connected to Invive. Before the regression, Beck was unable to find a connection between the two organizations. The powder that Jio and Baek found in Yoon Yiso's apartment was a special powder made from the wings of a fairy dragon. The fairy dragon wing powder had the effect of making a person forget about suffering and reality. A small dose will not be harmful, but if you inhale this powder for a long time, your body and soul will fall into a dangerously weakened state. Jio never imagined that people would invent drugs during the dragon hunt. The fortune teller noticed that when they met, greedy people were possessed by an unusual curse that did not bode well. After a long time in the cafe, it was time for Jio and Beck to leave. In the parking lot, Jio realized that it was not just a parking lot. There were about 4 more floors under it. Beck noticed that the place was covered tightly with mana. Normally, an ordinary object would be enough to check. Beck and Jio decided to go downstairs and check it out. But when they got to the elevator, they noticed that there was no button to go down. Beck said that now they were sure that this place was definitely hiding a dungeon. Geo felt the dragon's roar. Beck wondered if this roar was related to fear. A loud roar that scared away weak creatures was called dragon fear. But now Geo could hear the dragon's cry. It was the dragon's last plea for salvation, calling to his fellows before he died. There was a fairy dragon in this dungeon. Geo's dragon destiny began in childhood. She wanted to draw a dragon, but she couldn't do it. The library's skill level was insufficient. The materialization of the red dragon was a failure. The red dragon of the apocalypse, based on the Bible, could really exist. If Geo really wanted to materialize the dragon, she could go ahead. But the fate reader asked her to abandon the idea and go to the Tower of Babel instead. But Geo didn't want to go to the tower and began to be capricious. She thought the fate reader was a fraud. He explained to Geo that data materialization was different, and dragons were not weapons. Geo didn't want to give up, so she decided to keep going. She went to the library to borrow a book about dragons. After leafing through the pages of books for a long time, Geo finally found a dragon she really liked. She decided to materialize it in order to raise a great king, because Geo believed that the bigger the dragon, the cuter it would be. After many attempts, Geo failed. Of course, she was upset, but she realized that the lack of something did not mean that it was impossible to do. So Geo decided that she just needed to specify the size of the thing. So Geo immediately began a new attempt at materialization. She said that the dragon was small and lonely, and not really that strong and impressive. He didn't need eternity. He only needed someone to be with him. Finally, Geo managed to create the first living creature on the server. The cruel avenger Niddig was born. The first title, King of Mages, blossomed. Geo was happy. She noticed a tiny dragon in front of her and hugged it. This was the first birth of the first friend and family member of the King of Magic. Kiddo wanted to go to the Panji neighborhood in Seoul, but Kiddo's director did not belong to this neighborhood, so access was denied. Kiddo noticed that Korean Babylon was very diligent. The canal in this area did not have a local director, so the security stage of the Panji Canal changed from level 5 to level 3. Logging into the system as a limited manager began. The level of the director was low, so the changes in the settings were temporary. Kiddo realized that he still had few rights, but it was enough for now. He wondered what Joe would do this time. Beck and Geo entered the dungeon. The invaders were spotted in Sector B5 of the research center. Beck had always believed that dragons were regressive animals and that the government protected them. Representatives of the Invive Guild found them. Geo didn't want to deal with them, so she suggested that Beck leave the place. She entered the library to set the area. Edit mode deletes the selected zone. Geo removed the lowest floor. Beck was delighted with Geo's ability. It exceeded all his expectations. Geo decided to ask if she had really just met Shin Jinchul and his subordinate on the stairs. Yes, it was them. Of course, Zio told Beck that her contract star said the villains were from the Invive Guild. Beck was surprised at how freely Zio spoke to the Fate Reader. It seemed to him that the Fate Reader and Zio were really close. Geo smelled a strange odor and the atmosphere began to change dramatically. Geo started pushing Beck forward, explaining that she was in poor health. Beck just looked at her in surprise. Beck started to argue and say that he didn't want to be the first, and explained that he was also in poor health. Geo looked at Beck with a surprised look, and then asked him not to betray the king. Since Geo asked for it, Beck decided to agree to go first, but on one condition. Geo will fulfill one of his wishes. But Beck decided to tell him about his wish a little later. Geo promised that she would do it, just let Beck go faster. As soon as Beck opened the door, Geo immediately reacted to the dragon's cry. But when they entered the room, they noticed an open gate at the top. The gates were different. The first type was the one that reported the coordinates through a local channel subordinate to Babylon. The second type is a sudden gate that appears through an unexpected fault. And the third type of seed that silently appeared and waited for the right moment to open the door. Beck immediately informed them that it was a seed gate and they were not yet ripe. They used a fairy dragon to awaken them. For Geo, it was all shocking and unexpected. So Beck decided to explain that the living seeds of this sex were closely related to the fairy tale dragon. Their bodies were intertwined and functioned as a single being. Beck said that if they touched something wrong, the fairy dragon would die. Geo was upset. She needed to free the dragon and get out of this dungeon as soon as possible. Geo knew that if they reported what had happened, the guys from the center would take care of it quickly. Suddenly, Geo heard someone's voice telling her not to do anything. His name was Amphitrite. He told Geo that she smelled like a tribesman and called her the king of mankind. A dragon spoke to Geo. She told him that she also had a dragon like him. He was a little different, but they had some similarities. Geo did not like to talk about aspirations. The problem was not the conversation itself, but the dragon's feelings were getting closer to Geo. Now the sadness of the fairy dragon was very clear. The dragon asked Geo if she didn't feel that his life was coming to an end. Geo was hurt to hear this and assured him that he could be cured externally. But the dragon did not want that. He asked to hear his only wish. The dragon explained that the lives of the shortener and his partner were connected, so he didn't want Iso to die. The dragon's wish made Geo angry. Why did he think she came to break the contract? The dragon wanted to object, but Geo was even angrier. She asked the dragon to be quiet. Geo has never failed a task, so she told Beck to free the dragon. Someone shot at Geo. The fortune teller protected her and asked her to think of herself first, even if she was worried about the dragon. Beck was worried about Geo. The situation was getting worse. All the people who were on the top floor ran to the room with the dragon. The problem was that they all depended on Monomission. Gio didn't know what to do next. Beck drew his weapon and said that his shadow led to light, his pain led to salvation. And he told Gio that he would watch her back. So, without wasting any time, Beck decided to strike his first blow at the villains. Soon enough, one by one, Beck destroyed all the villains. Director of the Manhwa Center. At first, he was an unremarkable researcher, but during experiments on a fairy tale dragon, he brought to the laboratory by tricking Yun Iso. It turned out that it was possible to create a medicine from the dragon's blood. That's how he became a lifeline for the ruined Invive Guild. But by some chance, when he was standing at a crossroads and was about to give up due to his own incompetence, luck decided to smile on him once again. He was sitting in a bar drinking away his sadness when he was approached by a mysterious man who at first seemed dangerous and after a while terribly upset. He smiled like a fox and listened to everything calmly, and then he gave an unexpected answer about how noble the fairy dragon was. Innocent fantasy species rarely contacted humans, so it was easy to solve this problem. It was enough to incapacitate him and set him free. Later, it became clear that the Tamir could not receive an answer to the call because the real awakening was achieved not through the blood of the fairy dragon, but through the powder of its wings. The director of the Manhwa Center began to rejoice that he had found the answers to everything. He considered Kiddo to be a messenger of God and rejoiced like a baby until Huang Hong's assistant hit him. Huang Hyun couldn't understand what he was talking about. Huang Hyun found out that the director of the Manhwa Center was doing business behind his back, so Huang Hyun asked if the director of the center knew what was on his property. Tom Huang Hong said that all the drugs from the warehouses were returned and disposed of. According to the guys who worked in the department, they noticed similar activity. Tom Huang Hong realized that someone other than them was aware of all the events. Suddenly, Huang Hyun and his assistant heard a strange noise. Huang Hong did not understand what it was. The director of the center laughed and said they were too late. His friends had already taken the new medicine of freedom and were heading for the gate. The director of the center assured that they were all just victims who would see the beginning of a generation of liberation. There was an explosion in the room where the fairy dragon was kept. Beck barely managed to save Gio. The alarm began to sound about the danger. The disaster of the opening of hell had come.